Millville, Atlantic City.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. You can see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Thursday edition of the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Eagles preseason game number 1 is tonight. 6:30 is the start here on 97.3 ESPN. Joining me again, the last time I was on this microphone running the show, Kevin Durso was in the studio for Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN, 12:03 p.m., and Durso is now back. Now, Kevin, I got to say, you are really testing the limits because you did it for 3 hours with me on Saturday. You did 4 hours with Nick and Pete yesterday.
Yeah.
Now you're attempting to do another, what is it? Another 4 hours today. Is it fair to say you're getting your fill at this point?
Yeah. What is vacation exactly? You know, who needs a vacation? Who needs breaks? You know, we're here to have some fun.
So Kevin's hanging out with us as we got a lot to get to here on 97.3 ESPN, filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash. So here's what's coming up on the show today. As I mentioned, we have Kevin Durso in the studio. Of course, we got a lot of Phillies, a lot of Eagles to get to throughout the show. Here is the lineup coming up for you guys. John McMullen from Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. Eagles Insider at 2:30 today. Matt Gill from The Athletic getting into the state of the Phillies as they start a road trip. For those who don't know, they are starting a road trip. That's coming up. Matt will join us at 3 o'clock. And then football at 4, Andrew DeCecco from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. He will join us to preview the Eagles game as well. Another edition of Nick's Nuggets coming up at 4:25 today. And then former Super Bowl winner Tony Banks will join us. Now, for those who don't remember, Tony was a member of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. We have had him on talking about what it's like for quarterbacks in the NFL. He's been very high on Jalen Hurts over the years. But we want to get deeper into Tony's mind about preseason. What is preseason for an NFL player? Obviously, you know, it's a... You know, Kevin, before we get to anything specific, because I got a ton of Eagles stuff I want to get to today, a ton of Phillies thoughts from yesterday. If folks can join the conversation at 609-403-0973. We are live on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig, so you can connect with us a ton of different ways. Don't forget the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. But, Kevin, sports are like the only profession where you practice your job before you do your job.
Right.
Like there's almost no other, there's no other capacity where unless you like maybe like an internship or an apprenticeship where like you get some hands-on training to do your job. But like sports are the only profession where you go do a full run-through of your responsibilities of your job, and then you get told, hey, guess what? That didn't even count anyway. Like, I think the only other thing I could think of is acting, where, like, actors and actresses, like, go through, like, the whole, like, dress rehearsal and stuff. That's the only other environment I could think of that's like this.
Yeah, for me anyway, especially when you covering a sport, training camp and all that type of stuff is some of the best times that you have because there's so many storylines that come into play. You're talking about more people. Some of these players that you're talking about, you may not hear much about beyond that point. Some of them may be key players to your success. Or ever again. I've been there, done that, believe me. But certainly there's all sorts of things you can take from it. And I think there's a unique angle to sometimes what I've done with the Flyers and the Eagles going into it. When you're a team that comes off of a Super Bowl run, there's not as many spots open for guys. It makes those competitions maybe few and far between, but also all the more critical, as opposed to maybe something that's more wide open. And it goes, like, we'll look at this from different angles for different teams that go throughout the rest of the NFL, too, that other teams are going to be looking to add more players, look for somebody who steps up and takes over that specific position or that role. The Eagles may not have as much of that going forward because right now they have so much going for them in a positive direction.
So I got a ton of things I want to get into with the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and listen, we got a ton of stuff the Phillies stuff we'll get to throughout the show because after yesterday's game, I think it's blatantly obvious that no one needs to hit the panic button. But I think there is a level of how do we differentiate for the Phillies between we are in the dog days of summer versus are these guys did we run them into the ground kind of question, because that's been kind of the debate we've been having. At least I've been seeing people having throughout the last 36 hours,
right?
Especially with the Zach Wheeler.
Legitimate postseason concerns is what you're talking about, as opposed to it's just a one-off in the middle of August.
Well, because remember, there in 2022, there was a point where Zach Wheeler got extended time off because of arm fatigue, elbow fatigue, and then he was fine.
Yeah.
So you're hoping this is just a similar circumstance as it was 3 years ago. But it's something to consider because as we look at the football season right now, one of the conversations going into the Eagles game tonight, Eagles-Bengals preseason coverage begins at 6:30 p.m. here on 97.3 ESPN, your home for Eagles football in South Jersey. One of the conversations for the Eagles is the Bengals are going to play most of their starters.
Right.
The reasoning, I don't know if you've heard the reasoning, but Zach Taylor came out this week, the Bengals head coach, and he said, in years past, we have started seasons slow. We have not gone off the good starts at the beginning of years. We are going to, for the first time in his tenure with the Bengals, change it up, get guys into the preseason. Well, the Eagles are in a different circumstance. The Eagles have been in the postseason 4 straight years. They've been in 2 Super Bowl appearances, won 1. So the proof is in the pudding that whatever the Eagles are doing in the preseason and training camp and inter squads works. Whereas the Bengals are saying, yeah, we haven't even been to a Super Bowl in the last couple of years. We couldn't make the playoffs last year. So they're changing it up, saying, we're going to play some guys today. Now, we don't know, does Joe Burrow play 1 series and that's it?
Right.
Do they play a first quarter? I have no idea. But tonight, Kevin, you're going to see Eagles players fighting for jobs, fighting for roster battles against some starters, and that is going to be a fascinating test.
Sure is, and you're absolutely right about first off, the Eagles don't have to change what already works for them. They've done this in the past where they don't really play the starters that much. It's kind of made it more challenging for us to talk about a little because we have to dig that much deeper into the player pool and guys that are in those competitions that much more because we don't need to talk about Jalen Hurts or Saquon Barkley or anybody like that. And on the defensive side, we don't need to talk about Jalen Carter or Zach Bond or anything like that. We know their positions and we know what their responsibilities are and what to expect from them. The key for those guys, and I think A.J. Brown's a good example because he's been going through a little something, is just get to week 1 with full health.
For those,
That's all
by the way,
that
for
matters.
those who don't know, he has another hamstring tweak.
Right.
Does A.J. Brown.
So at that point,
By the
I
way,
think I'm off the table.
That's why he missed 3 games last year.
Right.
Was a hamstring issue, which, for those who don't remember, A.J. Brown didn't hurt the hamstring in the Packers game. He hurt it at practice 3 days for the Monday Night Football game versus the Falcons. So A.J. Brown tweaking hamstring in practice is like a thing, apparently.
Right. And I wonder if this would have been we might be having a different conversation because they didn't have a great start last year, and part of that was different injuries, guys that weren't able to get out there and play to full capacity early on in the year. But would it have been different if that had continued longer, if it felt like just a slow start was a slow start that evolved into an 8, 9, 10 week thing? Instead, it didn't. They turned the corner. Maybe they didn't win games right away most convincingly, but they turned a corner, and then they were much more efficient going further into the season. I think it changed our minds about the way that the preseason approach was, because sometimes I think you would have the similar thinking to what Cincinnati's going to do. We can't come in fully, guys just rested and taking games off and not getting any game action, because they come in and they look a little rusty in gameplay.
Well, you just mentioned something, and folks can chime in as well how you guys feel at 609-403-0973. You are 100% right. They have started out sluggishly, slowly, every year under Sirianni.
Mm-hmm.
But the formula seems to be get us through the first 4 weeks, then we find our sea legs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's 2021, right? The first half of the year was kind of meh, and then they took off, right? 2022, it was like a build. It kept building and building. Now, 2023, first couple weeks, meh. Then they took off like crazy, and then they hit the wall and fell off the face of the earth.
Right.
It seemed like.
Yeah, really.
So now last year, the first 4 weeks they were good, but once they hit that bye week and they came out of the bye week, they took off they were off to the races basically. So. Do people feel like that is a sustainable formula? Text in at 609-403-0973 because that's been the formula for Philadelphia. Every year, the first couple weeks are kind of like they're finding themselves or ramping it up. And I'm sure that maybe, Kevin, last year starting the year in Brazil didn't help.
Right.
And then playing the second game on Monday Night Football didn't help. And then they always lose, it seems like, in Tampa and the Heat.
And now there's going to be, again, for another year, there's a consistency that goes on basically since Nick Sirianni took over, which is a different coordinator all the time. So you still got to go through that adjustment process with Kevin Patullo and see if there's anything going on there either. That's part of it as well. They had completely different coordinators in 2023, and it kind of just keeps going through that process of trying to find your footing under these guys to make sure you get the best out of everybody, to fit into that scheme, to understand everything that goes into it. I think that people are maybe a little bit more comfortable now, maybe on the offensive side, because of just the track record of everybody who's there. I think now there's a greater trust, maybe more so than there would have been 2 years ago if Jalen Hurts struggled in a new scheme or a new system with a different offensive coordinator. I think now there's a belief, and Patullo was here last year too. That's another part of it. Like, it's not like this is some complete foreign concept.
Yeah, it's two parts of that you just mentioned about Jalen Hurts. One is Patullo, you're right. He's been here not just last year, but for the entire Sirianni tenure. His job is passing game coordinator previously. Apparently, according to Patullo and Sirianni and other reports, I always love when the coaches want to inform you things, because it's like you go to a press conference, you ask a question, you're looking for information. You don't get the information you were looking for, but you might walk out that was completely different information. Like, well, that was helpful. That wasn't my question, but I got something else out of it. You know what I'm talking about over there. Mr. Flyers Insider for 973 ESPN.com.
That's John Tortorella 101.
But, like, the Eagles have told us that Patullo was part of building the offense last year.
Mm-hmm.
Patullo has said that they're keeping pretty much the same terminology.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Hurts has said that him and Kevin Patullo have a great relationship. So on the surface, it sounds like everything is pretty copacetic. But to your other point, Jalen Hurts has had 11 different men in his ear calling plays in the last 10 years of his football life. Chew on that for a minute.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a guy who went from Alabama to Oklahoma to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
He has gone from Lane Kiffin to Steve Sarkisian to Mike Loxley to Lincoln Riley to Doug Peterson to, remember, it was Nick Sirianni, then it was Shane Steichen in the same year. Then it's Brian Johnson. Then it's Kellen Moore. Then, well, now it's Kevin Patullo. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some random Alabama OC because they kept cycling guys in and out of Alabama, the Nick Saban era.
Right.
But the larger point is that's a lot of different people to be in your ear, calling out plays, communicating with you in the midst of a game.
That feels like we're back on the conversation we had on Saturday about in your words, the stupid recycled NHL coaches. But that's exactly the point. When you keep changing it over so many times, you're right. That's a lot of voices to go through. And in the NFL specifically, when you have different guys who are actually impacting the game in that way by calling the plays, I think that can have a great influence on the amount of success. I feel like the thing with Hurts is that he's evolved his game enough to this point, not just from what you see him by the numbers or anything like that. I just feel like there should be anyway. The guy's a Super Bowl champion now, a Super Bowl MVP. There needs to be a little bit more trust in him to handle that and be that much of a professional. He's already kind of proven that, but without, I think, the title, it felt like that was falling short for some people. I hope that now more people are on that side of things where it's, let the guy go and play because he's proven so much already in a very short amount of time in the NFL that he can be on one of these career paths that involves a lot of success. Like I don't need Kevin Patullo to call a play that involves Jalen Hurts running with the ball in some capacity. I believe in his instincts to take off when he feels like he needs to take off. As a guy who was the passing game coordinator, I'd love to see the creativity element of what can you bring into this thing with all the guys you have around, because you've got A.J. Brown, you've got Devontae Smith, you've got Dallas Goedert, you've got so many options, screen passes to Saquon on occasion. You've got all sorts of different options that are available in that passing game that can really elevate it. You still have your signature play in your back pocket, and you've got two different guys who you could hand the ball off to, and more really, because I'm not even going down the running back depth chart here, but I'm focusing primarily on Saquon and Jalen as the two guys that you can really lean on when it comes time to run the ball, that they can both be dynamic.
He's Kevin Durso. I'm Josh Hennig. We're filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we will get more into the Phillies a little bit later in the show because I do have some questions about the pitching staff.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've talked a lot about the lineup in recent weeks, which I have plenty of opinions on that, obviously. But the pitching staff, I am curious where we are with that. So we will get to that a little bit later in the hour. Don't forget Eagles, Bengals tonight here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin's joining me, as far as I know, for the full 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You got me for 4 again.
Okay. Well, I don't got you. You got me.
Yeah,
you're stuck
it goes
with
both
me.
ways, I guess.
Okay. This is I am me. You are him. I mean, this is this is a as Mike Gill would say. We're different people. Yeah. But. I do want to know what the listeners, and we'll get to the audience in just a bit at 609-403-0973, because this whole idea of you are not going to see Jalen Hurts tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to see, the full gauntlet of the offense and defense.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're going to see guys in position battles. There are some players that I wrote about at 97.3 ESPN.com, and we will review that list still to come, about guys who are not just in position battles, Kevin, but guys who what they do over the next few weeks is going to determine the roster in general.
Right.
But some of those names have to do with positions that left last year, right? And so now you're talking about a team, no Darius Slay, no C.J. Gardner-Johnson, no Josh Sweat, no Mekhi Becton. But also don't forget, Kenny Gainwell has been your third down back for 4 years. Don't forget, Milton Williams was your number 3 D tackle for the last couple of years. And no Nakobe Dean.
Yeah.
To at least start the year. So we have some positions and players to figure out. But if you're not playing the starters a lot in the preseason, how do you really answer some of those questions? And I think for the fans, it's hard to explain to people, especially people of a certain age like myself, who you remember when football was football and you played 4-6 preseason games and guys were out there bashing into each other every game, Whereas now it's inter squads.
Mm-hmm.
And then who's watching inter squad? Well, the media is watching the inter squad.
I was just about to say, because I get put in this position all the time where it's kind of take our word for it that player A looked really good, player B did not look really good kind of thing. As if, it's funny because I always sit there and say when I go and do a game, I try to watch the game and give the listeners here and readers on the website and all that analysis from almost like a scout's perspective. I kind of try to almost emulate that job because I feel like that's where you're going to get the most information about a player.
Sure.
But it's also hard to do when that's not my job title. So what do you really know about you know what I mean? Like the media kind of gets perceived that way where it's, well, what do you know though? You're just the media member, not the person who's working for a team to give that kind of information. So, but it really does come down to that. We do this all the time when I'm at, say, Flyers training camp or development camp, especially development camp, when you get somebody, especially if we're doing position battles for the Eagles here, for example, with guys who are just drafted that maybe people have a little bit less exposure to because they may not be the biggest college football person or have watched that specific school's games that much and gone back and tried to play catch up on, well, the Eagles drafted this guy, I got to do all my research on this player.
Well, and that's another problem, and that is, a couple of the guys who are in position battles right now, you're going to hear the name Andre Sam throughout the day today. Most people have no idea who the heck he is.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hear the name Tristan McCollum throughout today. Most people barely remember that he was the guy who came in the games to play safety.
I was going to say a little bit more name recognition, but not by much.
Right. Another name you're going to hear is Kylan Granson. Most people don't know who he is. I think it's fair to say, right?
Sure.
So that's just an example of, like, you can't go, as you put it, Kevin, and be like, where did this guy play at school? And then go watch his tape. Because some of these guys, you might have trouble finding the game tape. or it's always the scenario on the opposite side of the spectrum where if you watch a guy in college and then you're like, why isn't he getting more playing? Like, for example, just to focus on one position group before we wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
The tight end position to me is fascinating.
Okay.
Dallas Goedert has missed an average of 4 games a year the last 4 years.
Yeah.
He has not been the symbol of health. Let's put it that way, okay? So whoever the backup tight ends are, they matter.
Right.
Now, right now, his primary backup tight end is Grant Calcaterra.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Calcaterra himself has a history of injuries.
Right.
Last year was the first year that Calcaterra was legitimately healthy between college and NFL.
Yeah, and look at his progression by
Right.
staying healthy.
So now, what did you do this offseason? You signed 2 tight ends,
Mm-hmm.
Harrison Bryant and Kylan Granson. And this is the conversation we're going to have with John McMullen coming up on the other side, because Bryant is the one with the resume.
Mm-hmm.
Granson is the one with the positional versatility. And you still have E.J. Jenkins,
Right.
who was on the team last year. So I think part of this month is going to be fascinating to watch because, one, do the Eagles keep 2 or 3 tight ends on the 53-man roster? If they only keep 2, how many tight ends end up in the practice squad? Does someone play so well that Philadelphia gets into the, oh, no, I can't get this guy through waivers. Can I get into my practice squad?
Mhm.
There's that part of the conversation.
Of course.
So there's so many variables that go into this, Kevin. And that's why I'm saying today you're going to hear, folks, a lot of names.
Mm-hmm.
But these names are going to impact all the roster decisions when we get to the end of the month.
Exactly. And you've got to go through that. That's part of the, I know Mike talks a lot about the journey, and usually that's the regular season journey, not necessarily the preseason journey, but there is still, and I know that they've already cut the preseason down to 3 games. They want to keep doing it more and more.
Right.
But this is where the value is had, especially when you're a team in the position the Eagles are, where you have a lot of questions answered about who your starting group is going to be. But you need those role players. You need the guys who come in, who either rotate in throughout the game or who are needed in the event of an injury.
He's Kevin Durso hanging out with me here in the 97.3 ESPN studio. I'm Josh Hennig. We're filling in for Mike Gill here on a Thursday edition of The Bash on 97.3 ESPN. John McMullen, Birds 365, Eagles Insider. He will join us next. We will ask him about the names of the people who are going to have an impact on the 2025 Eagles roster. All that and more so to come, plus your guys' text at 609-403-0973. Your DMs into the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. And we are streaming live on my YouTube channel. Just search at Josh Hennig. John McMullen coming up next on 973 ESPN.
It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check for your wallet first, before hitting the drive-thru.
$6.
Sorry, forgot my wallet. I have change, though. Here's 40 cents, another 40. Ooh, a bicentennial.
What's that?
Oh, gosh.
Checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
DQ presents The Sound of Happy. Hear that? That's the DQ Chicken Strip Basket. Only $7.49 for a limited time. We're talking 4 100% white meat seasoned chicken strips served with fries, Texas toast, and DQ signature country gravy. Yeah, you heard that right. For crunch time and no time, it can only be the DQ Chicken Strip Basket. Just $7.49 for a limited time. Get it delivered in the DQ app. Happy tastes good at participating locations.
You hear that? That's Mike sleeping soundly on a Sunday night. That's because Mike was smart this time. He took ZzzQuil Ultra to fall asleep fast, stay asleep longer, and get the deeply restorative sleep he needs. So now he wakes up refreshed and ready to conquer Mondays.
Let's do this Monday.
ZzzQuil Ultra. Not for colds, just for sleep. Really great sleep. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill alongside Kevin Durso here on 97.3 ESPN. Today's edition of the Sports Bash being brought to you by where Kevin Durso was at yesterday. Yuri's in Wildwood. Yuri's in the Boathouse. The seafood is extraordinary. The value is tremendous. The sun sets on the house. Yuri's Waterfront Restaurant and the Boathouse Restaurant at the foot of the bridge in Wildwood. Experience the best of the Jersey Shore at Yuri's in the Boathouse. And by the way, don't forget, Yuri's in the Boathouse is also a great place for your fantasy football get-together, Kevin. So, you play fantasy football?
Not too often, only because I have trouble keeping up with managing a lineup sometimes that maybe isn't related to the sport that I cover, because I'm so involved with that stuff usually during a season. But what I will throw out is that was a great time at Yuri's yesterday. That place is awesome. Definitely go check it. Go check them out. Can't say enough good things about being over there yesterday, and I love that you just played that coming out of the break, because that was my first song choice for my entrance music yesterday when during the or for my donut. I guess I got to prep myself for Nick's Nuggets again today.
Well, Nick's Nuggets will be back on coming up at 4:25 today on 97.3 ESPN. Right now, as promised, to get more into Eagles Bengals preseason game one. John McMullen, Birds 365 at JF McMullen on the Twitter X platform. John joins us now to talk more about the game tonight as you hear it on 97.3 ESPN. John, welcome back in. How you doing today?
Doing well. How are you guys? Preseason football, I imagine you're fired up.
Well, John, I'm fired up for just the reason that no more conjecture, right? We're done with the May through July what if season. Now we actually have people in cleats on the field. So we're making progress, right?
We are making progress, but boy, man, it seems a long way away. These are daunting, these preseason games.
They are daunting, and that's kind of where I wanted to start with you, John, because we were talking about before we got you on about how days like today are about guys that most people are not hyper familiar with, right? Everyone knows who Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and those guys are, whereas days like today and many times in training camp and inter-squad practices, the guys' names are coming up are like Kylan Granson and Andre Sam. So, John, I wanted to start with you. Who is the guy that is going to get playing time tonight that definitely has your intrigue?
Who I know, Smile Munden probably. I know is going to get, and I only say that because I think there's an outside chance that the Eagles are cautious with Jihad Campbell because of the March labrum surgery. So I'm 98% he's going to play, but I'm not 100. If Howie decides, look, we don't want to risk it. And Smiles played pretty well at linebacker too, so he's intriguing to me. And but you're right about depending how you go into these things. If you want to see Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, and A.J.'s hurt anyway, and Saquon Barkley, you're going to be disappointed. But if you want to see the young players and all the rookies, it's a 10-person draft class. It might have some value for you, but it's, the stars aren't going to play.
John, let's focus back on Mondin because the linebacker position, we all know there's one guy, right? Zach Bonds is the top guy at that position. But you mentioned Campbell. You mentioned Mondin. We know that Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is hanging out there. Nakobe Dean, he's still injured. What is the state of the Eagles linebackers as of August 7th right now?
Well, compared to what it has been with this franchise pre-Vic Fangio, it's pretty impressive just how many linebackers they have. And, Nakobe as well, who's working his way back. But, it's the deepest group in years, I would say, at that position. And for a lot of years, the reason why is because it was an afterthought. And, all the Eric Wilsons of the world, the Paul Warlows, the Corey Nelsons, the Nick Morrows, these were the names the Eagles were throwing at you as potential starters in years past. And all of a sudden, Vic Fangio gets here, puts more value on the position. You see the development from Nakobe Dean. You see them hit with Zach Bond. But, not a lot of people saw that coming. But Vic got a look at him and said, I think he can play off-ball linebacker. Now you use a first-round pick on Jahad Campbell, and you get a day 3 pick with upside and Smile Mondin. So, and Jeremiah Trotter's developing as well. This is the deepest linebacker group the Eagles have had in a very, very long time.
John, I wanted to stay with the linebackers for a second because I was very interested in seeing Jeremiah Trotter Jr. listed with the first team. His lineage, I think, makes him an easy guy to root for. What has he shown that has him in that first team slot so far?
Yeah, well, obviously, Nakobe, number one, is not going to be ready to go, so that's part of it. But he's been very steady. He's been very consistent, and that's a big thing with Vic Fangio to do what you're supposed to do, number one. And I think he's, as you point to his lineage, he's got a high football IQ. His father played linebacker at a high level. So he was a good college player at Clemson as well. So he understands how to play the position, and that goes a long way, especially at linebacker, because, one false step at linebacker turns a 4-4 into a 4-8 or 4-9. So if you have those instincts to play the position, and I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. does, it puts you a leg up.
I'm going to stay with the Clemson guys for a second because I wanted to ask you about Will Shipley. I think he's got a really good chance to make an impact to potentially take that Kenny Gainwell role from last season. How important is this preseason for him to take advantage of that opportunity?
Yeah, it's important. I mean, the thing with Will is, he's a great receiver. He's really good. And I think he'll be fine in that aspect of it. And I think that the backup to Barkley will be more layered this year. I think A.J. Dillon, if they need snaps, if they need running snaps, I think it'll be A.J. more than Will Shipley. But if it's third down, they need the receiver, it's going to be Will. So I do think it's going to be more layered. But the one thing that will keep you off the field as a third down player is you can't pass protect. So that's still a struggle for him, and he's got to pick that aspect of his game. So I'd be focused on that. I think he can do everything else, but if you get the quarterback killed, you're going to be off the field pretty quickly.
John, to that point, John McMullen, by the way, joining us from Birds 365, Eagles Insider, at JF McMullen on the Twitter X platform. Joining us here, Josh Hennig, Kevin Durso, filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. You mentioned with the third down pass blocking, John, if Shipley, if he falls on his face, right, if he doesn't do well in executing that primary assignment, then what do they do with the third down back?
Well, I think A.J. Dillon's in that equation then at that possibility, and obviously he has some size to better hold up from that perspective, but won't bring the same kind of receiving ability. I've actually been surprised how many second-team reps A.J. Dillon has gotten, so I think he's impressed the Eagles. You could also do a unique way. I mean, now they're going to use a fullback. You can use Ben Van Sumer, and everybody talks about how athletic he is. So maybe he can do a little bit more. But obviously the goal is to get Will Shipley out there. No question. That's the goal. But right now, pass protection. And by the way, that's with a lot of young backs in this league because they're not asked to do it all that much at the college level. So it's always a struggle for them. And it's not like you have to. There aren't a lot of great pass pro running backs in this league. Saquon's one of the better ones, and he admits it's a struggle at times. So it's basically the tight end mentality as well. Same there. It's lose, but lose slowly is what the sort of adage is.
Slow them down if you can't stop them altogether, right?
Exactly. Lose slowly.
John, interesting you mentioned that because I also wanted to ask you about the tight end. Dallas Goedert averages 4 games missed per season the last 4 years. So obviously, whoever is behind him on the depth chart is an important conversation. And listen, it was great that Calcaterra had a good year, but he himself has a history of injuries between college and the NFL. So I'm very curious to see what happens with who is after Goddard and Calcaterra. And right now, it looks like the 3 main names are Kylan Granson, Harrison Bryant, and then the guy from last year, E.J. Jenkins. What is your summary of those guys in their competition for that third tight end slot?
Well, I definitely think Kylan has had the best camp so far, but I wouldn't count on them keeping 3 tight ends at this stage unless I don't think anybody's been that impressive. If you go back to last year at the initial 53, they only kept 2 tight ends. They only kept Dallas and Grant. And then you have to, remember they have a 16-man practice squad. So it's a little bit different these days. So you could probably cut Granson and Harrison Bryant and get at least one of them back to the practice squad because they're vested veterans. So they don't have to go through waivers as long as you keep the relationship sound and explain to them, hey, we need this spot because we want to keep this young guy. We don't want to put him on waivers and expose him to somebody else. But if you wait around, we're going to bring you right back to the practice squad. Eventually, you elevate him to the 53. That's how they did it last year. They might do it that way again this year because Kylan's been the best, but he hasn't been great either.
Well, that's what's interesting, John, because, Kylan's got the versatility. He's the guy who can do the tight end. He can line up in the backfield. Then you got a guy like Harrison Bryant, who was a John Mackey Award winner in college, the best tight end in college football for 1 year. But then in the NFL, he's basically been an inline blocker, number 2 tight end. And then E.J. Jenkins, he got the advantage of knowing the offense. So, what do you think at this point is more valuable for the Eagles? Is it a guy who knows the offense, or is it a guy who has potential within the offense?
I think it's a guy who can play like Dallas Goedert for 17 games. The back end more. Look, Harrison was a great college player. He's not a great pro player. He's been around. Just because you're good at college, it doesn't necessarily translate.
Sure.
And that's one of those things. So I think people get excited by that kind of stuff. I don't see any of the back end of the depth chart tight end standing out. If you want a blocker, you might go Nick Muse. If you want a receiver, you might go E.J. Jenkins. If you want an upside, you probably go E.J. Jenkins. He's probably got the highest ceiling, and that would factor into it as well. But that's why I say, to me, that right now, unless somebody really, pops off in the preseason or plays well in the joint practices against Cleveland next week, right now, it looks to me like they'll do it like they did last year and use the practice squad.
John, if I can flip it over to the defense one more time before I let you go. Safety, obviously, is a position of a lot of unknowns. Sidney Brown, this is his first real offseason in the Vic Fangio between minicamp and training camp. Drew Makuba, he's a guy that I think everybody loves his potential, but he had the shoulder injury in training camp. Tristan McCollum was the guy who came in last year. And then there's that always, illustrious, it looks pretty what his potential is, Andre Sam. So what is your evaluation of those 4 guys at this point?
Well, Sidney's definitely in the driver's seat because Drew Makuba missed 6 practices, team drills wise. So, and that's the most important part. He was able to get back a couple days early with individual. But he didn't return to team drills until Tuesday. So he missed a lot of time, and the time he missed, Sydney has sort of taken the top spot, and it's going to be tough for him to catch up. But, I think people get too hyper-focused on week one. It doesn't have to be week one. I think a fan should have learned that with Cooper DeJean, who missed 20 days with a hamstring last year. It took him until week 6 to get on the field, and he was one of the best rookies in the NFL. So it may not be week 1. It may be week 6. It may be week 8. But Drew may be able to get on the field. A little bit of concern that he's very small for the position. A couple times in this camp, we just talked about Dallas Goedert has bodied him pretty significantly. And it was difficult for him just to get around Dallas's frame. So that is something to keep an eye on. But he's very athletic. He's got good football instincts. He's got tremendous coverage ability, and that's what Vic usually looks for and wants in his safeties, more coverage. That's the issue with Sidney Brown. I think Sidney's a good football player and he's healthy, but he's more of a box safety, and Vic doesn't really want box safety. So that might be a situation where, he's just using him as the placeholder until he finds the player he wants.
Well, I try not to read too much into these things, but if you go back and watch that Eagles behind the curtain thing they did with the draft, I think it's only the second time I've ever seen Vic Fangio smile was when they drafted Drew Makuba, John. The other time was when
the other time was when they drafted Jihad.
Right.
Because he was really excited.
That's what I was going to say. I've only seen the man really smile twice, and it's when those two guys got drafted. Otherwise, the only thing that puts a smile on his face is when John McMullen asks him about Dick Allen at the press conferences. He loves.
Hey, I got to tell you, Vic is actually very. He smiles a lot behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. Well, that's good to know because I do worry about him sometimes, but it's good to know. John McMullen joining us, Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel at JF McMullen, covers the Eagles every single day at the NovaCare Complex. He will be in the house tonight for Eagles-Bengals preseason game number 1, and you can hear it right here on 97.3 ESPN. John, great stuff. Appreciate you jumping on. We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, guys.
Josh Hennig, Kevin Durso filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank. A Sea Isle or wrap up the first hour of the Sports Bash. Coming up on the other side, don't forget, Matt Gill from The Athletic will talk Phillies coming up with us at 3 p.m. Football at 4. Andrew the Checo will join us from the Inside the Birds podcast. We still have Knicks Nuggets coming up at 4:25. And Super Bowl champion quarterback Tony Banks joins us at 5 o'clock. All that and more still to come on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
And if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
When your AC is playing defense in the heat, it's time to call in the pros. Team up with Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air for a new Bryant high-efficiency coastal system built to handle South Jersey summers and salty air all season long. Score 0% financing with no money down, plus rebates and tax credits on select systems. Trust the team that's been serving South Jersey for over 100 years. Call Broadlee's, your local factory-authorized Bryant dealer at 609-390-3907 or visit broadlees.net. Bryant, whatever it takes.
Let's go Birds! Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time. The next time you're out to dinner with friends, you can order the shrimp cocktail for the table. And maybe you'll realize it only comes with 4 shrimp after you've already given away 3, but that one shrimp will be so good. And if you switch and save hundreds, you could get shrimp all the time. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For shrimp. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. But not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams Super Sale and get 40% off paints and stains August 8th through the 14th. With prices starting at $29.39, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T?
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The key ingredient is something called Tesnor, which helps boost free and total testosterone levels to help you trim up and stay lean.
And it's made a difference for you?
Man, I feel like I'm in my 20s again. At work, in the gym, and in the bedroom.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles for people to try it for themselves?
Yeah, you just need to send them a text.
Text ALL to 321-321 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC.
All right, wrapping up the 2 o'clock hour. Josh and Kevin Durso filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, coming up on the other side, we're going to talk with Matt Gill from The Athletic because the Phillies, congratulations, you won another series. Also, congratulations, you found a way to lose a game that you probably could have won. And it's starting to wonder, what is the real flaw of this team? Did they overwork their pitchers earlier in the year? Is the Max Kepler Harrison Bader platoon turning into a game of roulette? We're going to ask all that and more to Matt Gill from The Athletic coming up next on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin Durso is joining me live here in the 97.3 ESPN studios. We're filling in for Mike Gill on a Thursday edition of the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN FM. Don't forget, you can text in to join the conversation. 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill alongside Kevin Durso, 97.3 ESPN. Take a little break from the Eagles conversation because the Phillies wrapped up a homestand. They're getting ready to take a road trip to start a series in Texas this weekend. And the 3 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Broadleys Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Broadleys is your trusted source for heating, plumbing, and service installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907 or visit them online at broadleys.net. Do the Phillies need some servicing? Because Zach Wheeler, his start's getting pushed back 2 days. Ranger, he was fine until he got later into the game.
Mm-hmm.
So should we be concerned about the Phillies, or is this just part of the dog days of summer? Matt Gelb covers the Phillies for The Athletic. He joins us right now on 97.3 ESPN. Matt, welcome in. How you doing on this Thursday?
Hey, guys. I'm doing good.
So let's start with the pitching staff. Obviously, the Wheeler news, him getting pushed back with a huge story when it popped up yesterday. Did you feel like Rob Thompson's explanation about it, was it enough, or do you think there might be more to it than that?
I think there's always concern when you're talking about a pitcher on his shoulder, and certainly when that pitcher is Zach Wheeler, there's going to be a certain amount of concern. So I think it remains to be seen. If he pitches Sunday and it's fine, then there's no concern. But I think there's still a chance that he doesn't start on Sunday. They kind of left the door open to giving him another day or two if he needed it, and I think at that point, if he needs another day or two, then maybe they just end up giving him a 2-week break. I will say that I watched him play catch Wednesday morning after Philly said that he was a little sore, and it looked normal. I don't know. I do think part of this is sort of the wear and tear of a season. I think he's been pitching through some soreness the last few starts. This time it was a little more sore than he would normally feel, so that's why he told them. I do know that they've been trying to get both him and Sanchez, extra days or maybe skip them once if they can, but this is not like last summer when they had, 7.5, 8.5 game lead in the division at this time in the schedule. They only have a 2.5 game lead, and the NL is so bunched up right now that, a few games here and there is a difference between, playing on the road in a 3-game wildcard series or having the 2 seed and having a bye from that 3-game series. So these games are important. It's not like they're in a position to just skip guys because they need to skip them. So we'll see what happens. But certainly there's got to be some concern.
You just mentioned about the past, and I go to my mind when Wheeler had that, elbow issue, general soreness back in 2022. They gave him some extra time off, and he came back, and he was perfectly fine. So it seems like to me that, as long as Wheeler is, taking care of his body and everything, the extra time off will be fine. He should be good to go. It's just the concern, Matt, is this team is where they are because of Wheeler, Sanchez, and to an extent Ranger Suarez and the pitching staff, because there have been times this year, Matt, as you have seen covering this team, that the offense disappears.
Yeah, and I think I'll say this. They've done a really good job of keeping their pitchers healthy for the most part. They haven't had it all figured out because no one does, but as far as teams go in the league, they have a reputation among players for being able to keep their pitchers healthy and effective. And Wheeler has a pretty strong relationship with the training staff. And I do think that there's not a lot of hiding things. So, if they think that he's able to pitch and he thinks he's able to pitch, then he will. And if not, then he won't. And I think it's kind of as simple as that. You're right, that month in 2022 did help him. He was still pitching a little compromised. Remember at the end of the line there in 2022, he was they had to give him some extra days in the playoffs. Like, he was not totally right. It was a very he was definitely more hurt than he had let on. And we'll see if this is the same situation this time. I would assume that if it was, then he would have gone on the IL 2 days ago. So remains to be seen.
Matt, I want to shift to another member of the starting rotation. Aaron Nola made his second rehab start on Wednesday night. His velocity was around his average for the season prior to the injury. Is he progressing as the team had hoped, and what could be a possible return timetable for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think last night's start was encouraging, and the velocity was way better than it was in his first rehab start, and you can tell that he's clearly building up to something. And the two or three starts before he turned the ankle, he really did start throwing harder. It was more 92, 93, some 94s. That's what they want him to be, sitting 93, touching 94. And I think he thinks he can get there. They think he can get there. And he'll have one more start at AAA on next Tuesday, I think in Buffalo on the road. And then he's going to join the Phillies in Washington. And I would say that, obviously not this week of him, but the weekend after is a pretty good spot for Nola to come back. I forget what date is in the calendar. I think it's either August 17th or 18th. That's Sunday or Monday. He would slot back into the rotation, I would say, and that's their expectation for him.
You talk about him where he could slot back in. Obviously, wherever he slots back in is going to cause a bit of a ripple effect. What is going to be, if Nola comes back and he's anywhere close to the Nola that we know he can be, what does that mean for the rest of the pitching staff, Matt? Because, Taijuan Walker, he has been serviceable getting starts. We know there's been a lot of conversation about who would start in the postseason. John Middleton said to you guys in the media about the whole we might only need 3 guys in the playoffs, right? So if Nola comes back and he is Aaron Nola again, what does that do? What is the ripple effect?
Well, if he's Aaron Nola again, then he's probably their Game 3 starter in the playoffs. I mean, seriously, there are enough questions right now about Ranger Suarez and Jesus Luzardo, that you could, if Nola comes back and comes back strong and really benefits from having, a few months off, rehabbing his injuries, he could be the third guy, and I do think it's possible they go to a 6-man rotation, maybe for 1 or 2 turns when Nola does come back, and that would be a way for them to get Wheeler and Sanchez, an extra day here and there. I don't think it's something they want to do for the rest of the season, but I do think it's something they could do, for a temporary period. But Walker would probably go back to the bullpen as a long reliever whenever Nola does come back, unless they do use him as a starter, 6th starter for maybe 1 or 2 turns. They are going to move some of those starters to the bullpen in October. Maybe they end up doing it at the end of September. Maybe Luzardo, they take a look at him as a reliever, sometime late in September. But again, I mean, given the standings, I mean, they need their starters right now because they need to win these games. I mean, it's not a slam dunk. And maybe if they do get a bigger lead and they feel more secure, then in September, middle September, late September, they start experimenting with things.
Matt, let's get into the outfield discussion a little bit here. Brandon Marsh, he's been hitting .302 since he returned from an injury on May 3rd. It's one of the it's in the top 10 in batting averages in the National League. Is there any possibility that he would potentially get more playing time, including against lefties, or do they really want to stick to that platoon structure they have going?
I think he could play more. And I think that my read on it moving forward, and we're going to see Friday, I mean, it'd be a really interesting test. I mean, whatever you see in a lineup is going to tell you a lot. So they're facing a righty, Merrill Kelly, Friday in Texas. And I expect Harrison Bader to be playing in center field, and Marsh is in left field. And that would tell you that moving forward, I do think their plan is for Bader and Marsh to play more, which would mean Kepler is more of a bench role, would get an occasional start against a right-handed pitcher. It's possible they still continue to platoon Marsh at times against lefties. Once Alec Boehm returns, which I think is going to be soon, you could see Otto Kemp get a start here and there against a lefty in left field. But I really think that they like the idea of Bader in center on pretty much an everyday basis and giving Marsh a little more run here because he has hit for more power. He would play a plus left field. We saw it when he's been out there in the past, especially last year. His left field is really good. It's way better than his center field. I think there could be a huge value from him being in left. So we'll see what the lineup looks like on Friday, but I think it's going to be Bader and Marsh, and I think that's going to be their plan.
Matt Gill from The Athletic joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, check out all of his coverage of the Phillies in The Athletic as he covers the team throughout the year. Matt, you just mentioned about what you expect to happen. Well, a lot of us expected a lot of things to happen either at the deadline or after the deadline after, and it didn't happen, right? For example, there's the whole Justin Crawford thing. Does he come up? Does he not come up? Dombrowski months ago said that Andrew Painter might be coming up around this time. He's still not up here. I think a lot of people were wondering, does Max Kepler get cut from this team. He's still here. So, how much of it is you expect to happen, and how much of it is if it doesn't happen, now we're getting another curveball thrown at us?
Well, I mean, Painter hasn't pitched well enough to come up. I mean, I think they expected him to be pitching better at this time, and he hasn't. So, and they haven't had a huge need either. I mean, like if they had a big need in the rotation, maybe they would have pushed him, even if he wasn't pitching well at AAA. And as far as the outfield goes, had they not gone out and made a trade for Harrison Bader or for another righty hitting outfielder, yeah, I mean, I think you would have seen Justin Crawford come up. I think that was their plan. But in their mind, they left that door open because they wanted to see what happened at the trade deadline, and I think they got an upgrade in the outfield with Bader, who can play against lefties and righties. So I think Crawford remains in play. If there's an injury, I certainly suspect you'd see him up. I think if there's ineffectiveness, what they've done now really, to me, is production matters now a lot more in the outfield in the majors. If someone does not produce in the next few weeks, they have an internal option to do. They can bring up Crawford and feel good about it. If Max Kepler is not producing over this long stretch, he's going to lose playing time, and I think that begins on Friday. I do think he will lose playing time. So, we can have expectations, and yeah, we did have some, but I think part of it, the results do matter, especially when it comes to Painter.
See, with the Painter conversation, are we getting to the point where we should just assume that he's just not going to come up at all this year?
I'm not there yet, simply because he's really talented, and there could be a need. I mean, if all of a sudden, if Wheeler does need, 2 or 3 weeks on the IL, and they have a need in the rotation, I still think Painter is in play. I do. And I know it's kind of been up and down. And my colleague, Charlotte Barnes, she wrote a great story. She went up to Allentown and talked to Painter for a while after his most recent start. And certainly he's dealing with kind of that first year after pitching from Tommy John sort of syndrome that guys go through, where it's his stuff has been there. I mean, he's sitting 97. He's touched 98. He's using all of his pitches. He's gotten some strikeouts, but he hasn't been able to command his pitches like he did in the past. And I think he's also learning, what more experienced and older hitters will do to his stuff. But I still think this guy is pretty close. And I think if they have a need, they would bring him up. So I'm not ready to rule him out totally. I'm not.
Matt, before I let you go, I wanted to touch base with you on one more point about the pitching staff, which is, we were talking about Painter, Nolan, all these guys. For you, what do you think is going to be the plan when everybody is up here and healthy? Not Painter, but I mean when Nola is up here. What do you think the Phillies want to do? What do you think they want to end up happening when it comes to guys like Taijuan Walker and his role, and then potentially down the road? What do you think everyone's role is if everything was all things equal? What is a realistic expectation for Philly fans? Because, Matt, we know the closer is. We know who the two setup guys are. It's Strom and Kerkering for Duran. That's what Thompson said. But what about the rest of the bullpen?
Are you saying for October or for September, or for because it's going to be different, late August, September, and then in October?
Yeah, I'm talking about August and September, because we know Alvarado is coming back. I'm assuming Walker's going to eventually go back to the bullpen too, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's Alvarado's another wrinkle, right? Because you're going to have him on August 19th. But you won't have him in October. So, I think Alvarado's going to end up slotting in at some point with Kerkering and Strom, for the 7th and 8th innings. I think David Robertson is more of a middle reliever, kind of a 6th inning guy that comes in maybe when there's a jam. I think Walker, either he's a 6th starter for a couple turns or he becomes a long guy for the rest of the year. I have struggled finding roles for guys like Jordan Romano and Joe Ross. I'm not sure that they're going to make it through the year on the roster. I just don't know if there's enough space for those kind of guys. And they've really used those guys in pretty low leverage, blowout kind of spots in the last few weeks when they've been healthy. So that's kind of what I'm envisioning. I think they want to stick with the 5 stars they have once Nola's back, their original intended rotation. Which they haven't really been able to use really at all this year because Nola got hurt right around the time Suarez got back. So I think that's their plan for August and September. And, yeah, that's going to change a lot going into October because they will have a little more flexibility and they won't have Alvarado.
For all of the coverage of the Phillies, go check out The Athletic. Matt Gill covers the Phillies, and also his teammate Charlotte Barnes over there at The Athletic. They do a great job covering The Athletic. And if you're not subscribed to The Athletic, well, you should be like me and be subscribed to The Athletic. Check out all their great coverage over there. Matt, appreciate you jumping on. Take you up the great work. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend.
Josh Hennig along with Kevin Durso back here in the 97.3 ESPN studios. Filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. So, Kevin, let's recap a couple things that Matt said there. You go, I wasn't trying to entrap him there, but, it's the idea that, he's saying, hey, I expect this to happen this weekend. Bader in center field. But, we have been expecting stuff to happen the entire year. And I don't have to tell you, you know what it's like either as a fan and a media member when you are running around expecting stuff to happen, and then when it doesn't happen, and then the team gives you some horse manure explanation, you're just kind of like, well, now what do I do?
I'm laughing because I'm thinking from my perspective, that was the Alexei Kolosov saga this year. What's the deal with this guy? Where is he? It's not supposed to be a game of, GeoGuessr or something with him, of all that. I was very intrigued by that answer about Brandon Marsh and him getting a little bit more regular playing time and kind of the idea that they could go forward with a Harrison Bader center fielder, Brandon Marsh left fielder situation. I think that's very intriguing. I think that Marsh has given you that consistency that allows for that possibility. Bader's had flashes of things, and I'm not talking about just the occasional hits he's had, like the go-ahead home run he had on Monday, but I'm talking about, he hit a ball really hard yesterday, and it's caught at the wall. Still, solid contact is getting you somewhere. His defense is good enough, obviously, to play out there. I think that the interesting wrinkle is Justin Crawford, because it sounds more and more like, as Matt alluded to, maybe that's a guy who just gets a call in the event of an injury or something like that, or that something else opens up or a guy doesn't perform and you have the guy waiting in the wings. But if these guys continue to give you something like Bader has on occasion or Marsh has with more consistency, there might not necessarily be a spot for him.
You mentioned about Crawford, and the Crawford thing is perplexing because, and this is maybe where leaning into you covering the Flyers helps a little bit, because baseball and hockey are a little similar in this whole, guys and when their clock starts and, years of service and when they get to free agency. And, there's this whole conversation out there about, well, why aren't they calling up Crawford? And there's a lot of people who have pointed out that you got to get past August 15th.
Right.
To basically, void him getting that extra year of service time, that he doesn't qualify for a rookie once you get past a certain date. There are other people who have said, though, Kevin, Phillies don't care about that. That's not the issue. But then when you ask people what's the issue, you get Rob Thompson saying, well, Max Kepler's hit the ball hard. And it's like, okay, and listen, I have been very overt in my ripping of Max Kepler.
Right.
Okay, I am not shy about that. But I'm also not going to be the person who's going to sit here and say that I know if you call up Crawford, he's the answer either.
Right.
So to me, the Crawford thing is fascinating because why are they doing it? Well, it might be this reason. Well, it might not be that reason. And then you turn it into a situation where the organization is not giving you an overt answer. Like Gelb said to us just now, Kevin, right? He said, well, Painter's not here because he's not pitching well.
Right.
Is it that simple, though?
It can. Sometimes it can be. With Crawford, there's kind of this, the line you have to toe, and I've seen it done with hockey prospects. I've seen it done with pretty much prospects in any sport where you really have a longer, like in baseball and hockey, they kind of have that longer timetable of full development. And there's this idea that you could be too early with a call-up because, just not quite sure whether or not the guy's going to handle that next step perfectly. You also get fed information, though, and I think Crawford's one of these guys. And there are players that I cover in the NHL side that are like this, that they'll call them fast track guys. These are guys who are more mature when they were drafted, or just more, whether it's physically mature, more skilled, more IQ level, whatever it may be. Those are the things that make them maybe a fast track guy. That was what was said about Crawford, was that he was on the fast track to get here, and now it feels like it's,
It's stalled.
Why are we not taking the training wheels off yet kind of thing?
It feels like it's stalled, right?
Yeah.
It feels like there's a part of this that's like, and we just stopped.
Especially because it doesn't feel like especially when you look at the numbers, it doesn't feel the same way as Painter does. I understand the Painter conversation. You can go look at the numbers and understand why he's probably not here. It's just not all put together yet. And I do think there's an effect of that involves the injury, the Tommy John surgery. You have to really be careful about that because of the significance of the injury and the surgery. Crawford's got none of that, though. He just has been performing with more consistency than any other prospect they have at the moment. And when you have guys at the major league level that aren't performing with that level of consistency, and that's why I thought the answer about Marsh was interesting. He does take away playing time from a guy like Crawford because he's becoming a guy you feel like you can't take off the field. If he wasn't that guy, if Bader for some reason wasn't living up to that expectation, if Kepler being Kepler with, good game on Tuesday night aside, that's the reason why there's more of an urgency in this push for get a guy like that up here, because what more does he have to show you with his level of consistency in AAA?
He's Kevin Durso. I'm Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up on the other side, we got some text to get to. I see Shaner from EHT. I also see Robbie from Little Egg Harbor. We got your text to get to, plus a Pro Football Hall of Famer made some interesting comments about Jalen Hurts. The praise he is giving, though, is not typically what you hear everywhere else. We'll get to that coming up as well. Andrew DeCecco, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Knicks Nuggets at 425, and Super Bowl champion quarterback Tony Banks. All that and more still to come. Josh Hennig, he's Kevin Durso, hanging out with you, filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
Do Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms keep coming back? Tremfya, guselkumab, may help, with rapid remission achieved at 12 weeks and lasting clinical remission at 1 year. Some even saw visible improvement of their intestinal lining at 12 weeks and 1 year. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Healing is possible with Tremfya. Approximately 3 out of 10 patients were in endoscopic remission at 1 year, based on areas visualized on colonoscopy, which may not represent the deeper bowel layer or entire GI tract. Individual results may vary. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
The back-to-school deals at Kohl's are so good, it'll feel like spoiling yourself. with 20% off the stuff your kids will actually wear, like jeans, tees, sneakers, and more. You can do it all without overdoing your budget. See? Sometimes parents get spoiled too. Head to Kohl's or Kohls.com to start the year off right for less. Select styles. Coupon ends August 10th. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohls.com for details.
Is your business craving efficiency? Is it hungry for productivity? Then there's a tech solution you should implement now if you want to crush your KPIs and you also want BLTs or burrito bowls or like bagels. It's called EasyCater, one platform for ordering food from a huge variety of restaurants for all your workplace needs. From falafel for the finance team to lasagna for the lunch and learn. Plus tools to help you save time and stay on budget. Ready to nail your deliverables? Order now at easycater.com.
Josh Hennig along with Kevin Durso filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash. 3 o'clock hour of the Bash being brought to you by Broadleys. Plumbing, heating, and air conditioning. Broadleys is your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907 or visit them online at broadleys.net. As promised, I want to get some text here, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I do want to thank the individual who said earlier in the show but didn't leave their name. Now, they didn't leave their names. I don't have to do with this comment. But they said, this is the best Sports Bash fill-in lineup host ever.
I'll take that as a compliment considering I've done 3 total shows in studio.
But
or remote.
But the larger point is, I don't know who said it.
Right.
So it's like, are you somebody who texts in often? For those who don't know, we can't see who you are unless you put your name on the text.
Right.
So it's one of those deals where it's like, are you a frequent listener? Are you not a frequent listener? I have no idea. Thanks for the compliment, anonymous individual. For all I know, it could be my mother. I mean, I don't know. Actually, it's not my mom. I can tell that much.
I can promise you it's not my father. He would comment on the YouTube stream.
At Josh Hennig on YouTube, by the way, when I fill in today and tomorrow for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. I did want to get to a couple of texts. We got one on the Phillies, one on the Eagles. I promise I'd get to at 609-403-0973. Sticking with the Phillies really quick, Robbie from Little Lake Harbor says, Marsh has been, I think he's trying to say that Marsh has been consistent.
Right.
And I will give him credit for that because, and this is where like the Brandon Marsh part of the conversation is interesting because I'm not against keeping Marsh in the lineup. I think that Robbie Little Lake Harbor is right. I think that I think it was Ruben Amaro Jr. who mentioned this in the broadcast a couple days ago, where it's like Marsh has genuinely turned his entire season around.
Yeah.
He was 0 for 22 in April. Then he got injured. People forget about that. Then he was forced to go down on a rehab assignment. But since Marsh came back, he has arguably been, what, your fifth best player, basically? Like, at least offensively. You know, he still makes some dumb plays in the outfield. But, you know, you could argue that the Brandon Marsh that we have gotten since he returned from his injury has been good enough that you're comfortable leaving him in the lineup. Is that fair?
Yeah, and it depends on which angle you want to look at to call him, you know, fifth best player in the lineup or whatever it may be. He's not the power guy. It's better lately. He's hit for more power lately, but he's not typically the power guy. So if you're looking for the home run numbers, you're still obviously talking about Schwarber, and then Harper's come on a little bit more lately, and that's pretty much the primary source of your power. Real Muto's hit a couple lately as well, but still not consistent enough. I brought it up on the show yesterday. Marsh is hitting .302 since coming back from that injury, and it's sixth in the National League.
During that stretch,
which is remarkable. Like, he's not the guy who you think of to put at the top of that list. You know, Trey Turner being as consistent as he's been with his batting average over the course of the season, or watching guys build their batting average back up. Like, Marsh has been that guy who, as it goes through, is building that overall season
Which
average.
is ironic because, remember, Stott became the leadoff hitter. He did well for a short time.
Yeah.
But as Marsh has gotten better, Stott has gotten worse.
Yeah, I just can't get over when you're going back and looking at those numbers. I can't get over the fact that Marsh has brought his season total back to what it is when he was hitting .095 at the end before that, like, going on injury and going on a rehab assignment.
But the other thing with him since that time, Kevin, has been you pull up the numbers because it's overall been 74 games since he came back. Over the course of 74 games, one, that's a level of consistency at 302. But it's also another stat I think is important. It's the fact that he's getting on base in general.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you at least have someone in your lineup that is not Schwarber, Harper, Turner that you know can get on base.
Yeah.
That can get some walks, make some solid contact. So that's why I'm totally okay with the idea if you told me the Phillies starting lineup moving forward was going to be Harrison Bader in center field and then Marsh in left field. Because I think that Marsh is a legitimately he's a starter in this lineup at this point. He is not just a throwaway.
Well, and I think the Tuesday, Wednesday differences there are what kind of shows that, because you win the game effectively on Tuesday night against Baltimore because of the bottom half of the lineup, guys who are coming through in place of Schwarber, Turner, Harper, etc.
Correct.
You win that game with Bryson Stott getting a big hit. Marsh was obviously a key player in that. Max Kepler has a big game. It's not necessarily something you're looking at and expecting every single day. It goes right into Wednesday. You don't have as great of an offensive day on Wednesday. You're still not getting it from Schwarber, Turner, Harper. Turner actually, I shouldn't say that. He was on base 3 times in the game, was a home run shy of the cycle. He set the table. Nobody could bring him home after the fact.
But he had struggled for the last couple of weeks.
And he had. That's true. What you were looking for, though, is kind of when those situations came up, whether it was Turner getting on base to maybe lead off an inning or lead off the game or whatever it is, and somebody else who gets on base in whatever way possible, that you got down to the bottom of the lineup and it's a Marchand day. It's Weston Wilson's playing in the field. Otto Kemp is in there. And now it kind of diminishes what you have because those guys haven't been in there long enough, like an Otto Kemp, or it's Weston Wilson. You kind of know what to expect, that kind of thing.
It's another thing is that, and this is where the platoon conversation comes in. When, and this is, by the way, this is a bad job by me. I should have mentioned this to Matt Gill when he was just on with us. When on earth is Alec Boehm coming back?
He said soon, which I was interested by. Now, I'll admit.
But what is soon?
Based on his explanation kind of with the NOLA discussion, I'm wondering if he thinks it's possibly within another 2 weeks, the way that he kind of made that sound. Like, I don't know. I was really concerned at the timing of that Bohm injury that I was thinking late August, and like by late August, like practically pushing September.
But see, this
it's
is
a
my-
rib. It's not that's a complicated injury to come
But
back
see,
from.
but it's complicated because sports is complicated.
Well, sure.
Okay? Like, I've watched enough sports in my lifetime
Mm-hmm.
to watch quarterbacks play with punctured lungs and fractured ribs, right? I've watched hockey. You've watched hockey players play through all kinds of injuries. I've seen basketball players, Joel Embiid play with a broken face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we've seen guys play through injuries.
Mm-hmm.
The rib is complicated because it's not like when he hurt his wrist.
Yeah.
And it affected his ability to turn the bat over, right?
Yeah.
A rib, like, you could theoretically still play with a broken rib, baseball. Now, where is the rib? Where is the break?
Mm-hmm.
Where is, like, for example, when Nola had his rib injury, Nola was very overt when he talked to, it was Bob Wankel and,
Was this on the cross? What is it?
yeah, their podcast.
Yes.
They did that interview. Who's the guy who does the show?
Anthony Sanfilippo.
Thank you. Anthony and Bob were talking one-on-one with Aaron Nola a couple of months ago. And Nola talked about it. He was very clear. He said, look, the problem was the ankle. He says, but later I felt something,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't think it was the rib. Then they found out he had a hairline fracture in the rib.
Right.
Now, pitching is a very different set of mechanics than hitting.
Mm-hmm.
But also, where the rib injury is, remember, there's not one rib in the body.
True.
Okay? You have 2 ankles, 2 wrists, 2 shoulders, 2 elbows, 2 knees, right? There's what, 14, 15 ribs in a rib cage? So, like, the rib at the bottom is different than the rib at the top. So, like, where that rib is messed up, that's the complication, number one. Number two, I got to be honest. I got to be careful how I say this because I'm not trying to create any liability for anybody here. But, okay. So, for those who are pro wrestling fans, okay, there's the whole storyline right now that Seth Rollins ripped up his knee, and Seth Rollins was literally going on other radio shows and interviews with the crutches, with the brace, with the everything. And then he comes out of SummerSlam and he has no injury.
Yeah.
And now they're doing the storyline on WWE where it's like, you lied to us, you lied to your employer, we don't trust you anymore, you lied on your medical records. Like, they're creating a whole shtick.
Yeah.
Well, take that and apply that to the real world. Okay? If you just hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
Alec Bohm went into the All-Star break. He was supposed to come out and be good to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
He comes back, and all of a sudden, it's injured again.
Yeah. I was just about to kind of get into that. Was where I was going to kind of get into it. And this is why I think this bridges a gap between kind of what we're talking about with guys potentially coming back and Zach Wheeler. Because right now, you ask Rob Thompson, there's no concern. Everything's fine. Everything came back clean. He's good, right? That's the impression they're trying to give you, is that everything's good. I don't think anybody's going to feel that way until he takes the mound on Sunday, assuming that that's exactly what happens based on what they've done, and pitches well enough to calm everybody down. If he goes out and either has a poor outing or does not make that start, then all eyes are back on Rob Thompson for, well, you told us he was clean and you told us there was no concern. Now we're even more concerned because you changed your tune on that.
Right. And, like, again, I'm not trying to accuse anyone of anything. But I just know we are Philly sports fans.
Mm-hmm.
We have been through enough weird injury stuff when it comes to the 76ers and all of their plethora, from Markelle Fultz's thoracic outlet syndrome to Joel Embiid's Bell's palsy to Ben Simmons' back, quote unquote. And so now you have a guy in Alec Bohm. He had a legitimate injury last year, an injury that it was very obvious that affected him negatively. This year, he started finding himself again, right? He
Yeah.
started getting back into a groove. He started doing well. He was performing. He started looking like the Alec Boehm that was an all-star last year. And now he has this rib injury. And right now, it is August 7th. Kevin, you realize we are now almost 3.5 weeks, almost 4 weeks removed from the last time Alec Boehm was in the lineup for this team?
Yeah.
At what point is this an injury? And at what point is somebody not telling the truth?
Yeah, especially, well, that was the way people felt when he came back post All-Star break and played one game, and then there's something wrong again. It's like, one, why did he play the game in the first place? Like, you could have delayed that timetable.
Like,
he doesn't play.
What happened in that game?
Right.
Well, first of all, what happened to make you think he was fine?
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened between the end of that game the next day? Because remember, it was like 24 hours.
Right.
You know, before we got this, oh, by the way, Alec Boehm's going on the injury list. You're like, what? You know? So, like, I want more information. I'm trying not to be hyper judgy over here. But I feel like there's and again, I understand medical, personal, HIPAA laws, blah, blah, blah. Okay? I understand how the law works, people.
Yeah.
You want to blame someone, blame me. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill, along with Kevin Durso on 97.3 ESPN. But I am asserting, no one else is, because I'm the only person I've heard talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
Yeah.
I just don't understand. And again, part of the problem is I'm 40 years old. I've watched enough sports in my life to see guys playing with all kinds of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget the 97 World Series. Now it's like Dave Dombrowski because I'm doing I remember back in blah, blah, blah. So, yes, I'm as guilty as Dombrowski is doing this. But like I remember 97, Bobby Bonilla was playing for the Marlins. He was the third baseman. And the whole storyline of that World Series was Bobby Bonilla had been dealing with hamstring issues the entire year. And so there was this huge concern in the World Series because they're playing Cleveland. And they have to go on the road, and when it's cold outside, your muscles tighten more, right?
Yeah.
Well, there was this whole thing of is Bobby Bonilla going to be able to play through the hamstring pull? You know, is his hamstring going to stay loose enough? You know? And then there was this whole thing where it was like, Darren Dalton's getting older. He doesn't run as well as he used to. The knees might lock up in the cold weather, you know? And so there were all these conversations in baseball, right? Or you look at a guy, to use another example, you know, one of the conversations people don't talk about enough about Chase Utley was that he played through a lot of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think the biggest reason why Utley will probably never get into the Baseball Hall of Fame is because of the injuries. The injuries docked his career.
Sure.
Of the big three, he arguably has the worst resume of those between him, Ryan Howard, and Jimmy Rollins. But the part of the conversation was that, well, Utley at times played through injuries to his own individual statistical detriment, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe his batting average, maybe other stats would have been better if he would have just taken an extra couple days off.
And I'm sure it depends on who you ask in this situation because there's people who would love this and hate this about Chase Utley, but the integrity of the game statement that goes into that Hall of Fame conversation and how old school of a player he was, because what you're talking about playing through injury and things like that is also a very old school approach. Guys who took that mindset and ran with it. It's what we see. So certainly what I see in hockey all the time.
But that's where I'm having trouble.
Right.
I'm having trouble deciphering where the line is between Alec Boehm, is he injured or is he hurting? They're not one and the same.
Right. There's a difference between the two.
I've listened to tons of former athletes talk about this over the years. There's a huge difference between a guy is hurt and injured. They're not one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, not accusing anyone of anything, but I'm just trying to decipher when you tell me Alec Boehm will be back soon, what that really means.
It's the classic maintenance day explanation.
Well, this is 4 weeks of maintenance.
No, sure, but like whenever we get so and so has a Travis Konechny has a maintenance day. It usually just means bumps and bruises, banged up a little, but there's no specifics to it, and it's not really a true injury per se. Like, we have to do more digging on true injury because, I mean, also in my world, we only get upper and lower body. We don't get rib and ankle and wrist and
Well, yeah,
things
for a guy
like
like
that.
you, you're like, wow, I actually have like an actual injury report here. Like, what do I do?
We spend just as much time trying to decipher what said injury is based on the video we have
Right,
as we do getting the injury report itself.
Right, you're like the ZipRuder film. You're like rewinding it, playing it back again. It's like grainy. It's like, wait, was that an ankle? Was that his knee? I can't tell.
Some of them they can't hide. Like, some of them are just plainly obvious, but there's others where we have to like dig deeper and be like, so what exactly could have possibly been tweaked there? You know, as opposed to getting hit in the knee or whatever it is. But I see your point there. There's the difference between an injury and just hurting and trying to come back from something that's a typical pain.
All right, coming up on the other side, we got Shaner in EHC has the Eagles question I think is interesting because it kind of relates to a comment that a Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterback made about Jalen Hurts. He's Kevin Durso. I'm Josh Hennig. We're filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN FM. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. And we are streaming live today on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
Comcast Business High Five Hotline. What's the state of your excitement?
I signed my business up for the 5-year price lock guarantee, and I can't stop high-fiving people. High five!
Okay, deep breath. You're in a good place. You signed your business up for 5 years of gig speed internet and advanced security, all on our ultra-reliable network.
Gig speeds and advanced security? I'm so stoked!
Yep, and you get it at a great rate that's locked in for 5 years.
Woo!
The high five is just your body's way of saying, I'm winning.
So this is natural.
High-fiving everyone you see in a state of business savings enthusiasm? Totally natural.
Sweet! Thank you! Thank you! High five, everybody! High five!
The Comcast Business 5-year price lock guarantee is back, but only for a limited time, so sign your business up today.
High five!
Comcast Business, powering possibilities.
Ends 9/21/25 for new customers with qualifying bundle. Current customers may be eligible depending on services and area. Guaranteed rate applies to monthly service charge, excluding taxes and fees. Other restrictions apply.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide Free and Gentle provides an excellent Tide clean, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues like dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on your skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Keeping the fans entertained and happy.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
He's played so well in both those Super Bowls, but I like the way he goes about it. He calls me a lot. It asks me lots of questions. They actually run a lot of plays that we used to run, Sirianni to Frank Reich to Tom Moore, sort of that chain. And he calls me with very specific questions about certain plays. So he's a student of the game.
That was, yes, Peyton Manning. He was on the he was on the Pro Football Focus podcast with Chris Collinsworth.
Mm-hmm.
And who's John Collinsworth? Chris Collinsworth. And I thought that was the most interesting thing I've heard about Jalen Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
That this is the guy who's like, oh, by the way, we talk often. And he's running plays that I used to run. And he's calling me and asking me about how to basically run those plays better.
Mm-hmm.
And then that guy is saying, oh, and by the way, he's really good. So I think that addresses all these conversations about Hurts. Shaner and EHT asked about, with fantasy drafts coming up, how do you value Jalen Hurts? And I think you value Jalen Hurts because people like Peyton Manning value Jalen Hurts. And yeah, he's not going to put up Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen stats. But I think that Hurts is still getting better, Kevin. And I think because he's still getting better, that evolution, that progress by Jalen Hurts is something that you can count on.
I agree with that. The student of the game comment really stands out to me because I love players who are like that in any sport that aren't satisfied. He's clearly one of these types of guys. Some might look at him and it's a little too calm or it's a little too even keeled for everything. I just think that he's not satisfied and in addition looks at it like this is only the beginning of a career path. We're not at the end just because I won a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP. I'm just at the beginning here. There's more to learn. There's ways to get better, and I'm prepared to do it.
I think Jalen Hurts is going to be a valuable guy for fantasy football players this year.
I do too.
Now, the other side of Shaner and EHC's question we'll get to a little bit later in the show because he asked about somebody else on the Eagles too about how Jalen Hurts' value will impact somebody else.
Okay.
Because I had a conversation with a buddy of mine the other day. The other player in Shaner and EHT's text, I told people I would not draft high in a fantasy draft.
Okay.
We'll get to that a little bit later. He's Kevin Durso. I'm Josh Hennig. Hey, we're filling in Mike Gill. Filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up, football at 4. Andrew DeCecco joins us with the latest as the Eagles preseason Game 1 is tonight.
Progressive presents Employee of the Month. Small Business Edition. Today's recipient from Lucky Larry's Landscaping, Larry! Larry saved his business money with a quick commercial auto quote from Progressive. Does it help he's his own marketing manager, accountant, executive assistant, and never been late? Technically, yes, but saving really put him over the edge. So, Larry, give Larry a round of applause. Be your own Larry. See if you could save in as little as 8 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Febreze. It's a classic odor tale. You fried fish for dinner, cleaned up, but the smell is still in the house. And the neighbors are coming over for game night. They're on their way. And then you spray Febreze Air Mist. Febreze Air starts working instantly to fight even your toughest odors, so you go from fish to fresh like that. Now, all you have to worry about is Pam cheating at charades.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
Switching to Progressive is a game-winning call. And that reminds us of other game-winning calls in the history of sports.
It was a doubleheader in August, and really hot inside the concession stand. So instead of waiting for people to come to me, I figured I'd walk around yelling, "Hot dogs here!" And that's how I became the first hot dog vendor in sports.
Okay, not really a game-winning call, but it was a good call. You can make one too. Switch to Progressive and you could save hundreds. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, not available in all states.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, as it always is every day here on 97.3 ESPN. Eagles, Bengals tonight. Coverage begins at 6:30 p.m. and Mel Reese of Mike Quick calling all the action for preseason game number 1 here on 97.3 ESPN. And right now, joining us, as he does each Thursday, Andrew DeCecco, InsideTheBirds.com. He covers the Eagles all throughout the year, and he is keeping a close eye on the different position groups tonight in preseason game number 1. Andrew, welcome in. How you doing today?
Hey, Josh, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good because we actually have football on the field, and it's not just conjecture we've been doing for the last several months. So
right.
For you, Andrew, I know that, these are the kind of games that all the ramp up is for, right? All of the, you do all the studying of the draft, you do all the analysis of these guys in training camp, but now we get to see them in action. So let's focus on some of the position groups that we need to keep an eye on tonight. I wanted to start with a guy that you're very, very familiar with. For those who've been following you on InsideTheBirds.com, on the Inside the Birds YouTube, in all the different places you can get Inside the Birds content. A guy that you have gotten to know is Will Shipley. This is going to be a unique opportunity for him to cement himself over the next month between preseason, training camp, inter-squad practices. So for you, what should the audience keep an eye on when Will Shipley is on the field tonight?
Well, Will Shipley adds another dimension to this offense. He has a lot more juice than the other two players in that backfield, and he's really good at catching the football. Now, the question becomes, where is he in terms of pass protection? And that's something that I asked the Eagles offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo, about the last time he was available. And that until you see it in a game, it's really difficult to make that assessment. So I'll be keeping an eye on that because for Will to be the number 2 running back, obviously, and see a more meaningful role, obviously, you need to be able to acquit yourself well in pass protection and earn the confidence of the coaches. So that's what I'll be keeping an eye on, and I think he's going to see a lot of run tonight.
You mentioned about the pass protection. Obviously, that was something that Kenny Gainwell was somebody that was used a lot in that capacity. Do you believe they're looking at Shipley just as a guy that is going to be the new Kenny Gainwell, or do you think he could have maybe a different type of role behind Saquon Barkley?
Well, Kenny Gainwell was unique in the sense that the Eagles trusted him, and he was their 2 and 4 minute back, and he was able to do a lot of things in terms of short yardage, despite not having the biggest frame for the position. But Will Shipley is a player who offers a lot more explosiveness, and he's an even better receiver, and you can move him around formations. I think you can get a little bit more creative in how you deploy Will because of his unique skill set. But so I think you might see them used a little bit differently. But again, what Kenny Gainwell was able to do very well in terms of, in addition to being the 2 and 4 minute running back and catching the ball reliably in short yardage, was he was pretty solid in pass protection. So a lot of this is tied to Will's ability to take that next step forward in his progression and showcase some improvements in pass protection before we are able to determine what role he may take on this year.
So with Andrew DeCecco, at Andrew DeCecco on the Twitter X platform, of course, InsideTheBirds.com for all of his Eagles coverage. The next position we keep an eye on tonight, Andrew, and I'm not sure why more people haven't talked about this, honestly, but I'm curious about tight end because every single year Dallas Goedert missed time. Nothing against him, but he has not been the example of great health at times, right? He's been banged up every single year. This offseason, you signed Kylan Granson. You brought in Harrison Bryant. You already have Grant Calcaterra. I know E.J. Jenkins is down there in camp. So for you, what are you looking at from the tight ends tonight?
You know, I'm looking to see somebody really step up and make some noise here because in training camp, it's been a mixed bag. Harrison Bryant hasn't really flashed like we were expecting to see because he had in the past. Kylan Granson, I think, of that group has made the most impression, the most impressions throughout camp. And he does have a wide-ranging skill set where he can be an H-back. You can line him up in the backfield. You can line him up out wide. He's also a really good special teams player. But and then E.J. Jenkins he missed a couple days with a hamstring, and then he Caught a couple passes in team drills. So no one's really emerged from the pack there. That's where the games are going to be the ultimate separator, in my opinion. But I've always been of the belief that they could be vying for a position that may or may not even exist. I'm not so sure the Eagles would even carry that many tight ends on the roster because they had a lot of success last year carrying two and then elevating one from the practice squad. But of that group, I think Kylan Granson's kind of interesting.
So let's say, for example, I'm just putting out a scenario, and I think that's what's going to happen, but you mentioned with the practice squad, is there a scenario where maybe the opening day tight end, right, for Thursday night when the Eagles play the Cowboys, that you talk about Goddard, Calcaterra, and then Granson might be the three tight ends, and then maybe a fourth guy would go to the practice squad? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I'm even thinking that they might carry two on the 53 and then maybe one or two on the practice squad and then elevate depending on the matchup.
Gotcha.
You can get a guy like an EJ Jenkins, who's a good blocking tight end at 6'6", 260 pounds. Granson is a movable piece that I think could really fit in and give Kevin Patullo some optionality. So it all depends. I think it'll be matchup dependent.
Andrew, flip it over to the defense, because with the trading of Thomas Booker this week, we all talked about, well, what does Bennett mean to the cornerback position? Well, what about what it means for defensive tackle? And I know a guy that someone like you is going to keep a very close eye on is Gabe Hall. Tell the audience about who Gabe Hall is and why he is a guy people need to keep an eye on tonight.
Yeah, and I've said this a few times since the trade happened, but if you're the Eagles, you don't move off of someone like Thomas Booker IV, a player who likely would have made the team and been the fifth defensive tackle, maybe even been the fourth to start while Ty Robinson continues to grow, unless you're confident in the development of Ty Robinson or Gabe Hall, because Byron Young's another young defensive tackle, but he's working through a groin injury, and he was when the trade was made. So that, to me, suggests that the Eagles are seeing what I've been seeing through the 10 practices, and that Gabe Hall has flashed. He's been in the backfield a couple of different times. He's 6'6", 295 pounds. He's a rangy guy, athletic, and I think that he's made a noticeable difference in year two. He didn't really flash a ton last preseason, but I think that he gives the Eagles some optionality there. He can play any position on the defensive line, and he's had a good camp. And he has a cost-effective contract, which also helps as well, being a second-year player.
Aside from Hall, obviously I know Moro Ojomo's got a lot of hype, but what about Ty Robinson? Talk to us about what you want to see from Ty Robinson. He's a guy that a lot of people loved when the Eagles drafted him.
Yeah, I've gotten so many questions recently about Ty Robinson because understandably a lot of folks are curious about him. And my answer is always, in the beginning of camp, he didn't really stand out in any way, good or bad. But the more reps that he's received, the more confidence he seems to be playing with. He's picking up on the techniques that are being taught by defensive line coach Clint Hurt. And I do think he's going to play a ton in the preseason, which should go a long way in better assessing where he is at this stage. And again, you don't trade someone like Thomas Booker, who is already ready to step in there and play, and he was having a good camp, if Robinson's development isn't on schedule, or Gabe Hall for that matter as well. So he's coming along nicely, and it's been a little bit more gradual. He hasn't had the flashy plays, but you can definitely see the noticeable growth practice to practice.
The final position we're here for football at four positions to watch for tonight when the Eagles take on the Bengals. You can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Andrew Duchecko from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast on the line with us. Andrew, let's get to the safety position. No more C.J. Garner-Johnson. You have to find somebody else to play next to Reed Blankenship. Again, for a third straight year, there's a lot of interesting candidates. You drafted Drew Makuba. You already have Sidney Brown in the building. Andre Sam is a guy who knows the Fangio system. And then you have Lewis Seen. So who are the guys you actually expect to see on the field, and what are you looking for from them?
Andre Sam, second-year player who was undrafted last year. He knows the system from being on the Eagles practice squad last year. He's had a nice camp, and I think that he's actually a player that everybody should be highlighting because, being in the meeting rooms with safeties coach Joe Casper, C.J. Gardner-Johnson was pretty much a big brother to him. They trained together the offseason leading up to the 2024 season. And so presumably he has a better perspective on what to expect here in year two, and he's playing a lot faster with more confidence. He's carrying himself better. And Tristan McCullum is another player that Vic Fangio mentioned for being another name in that safety competition. Now, it really is going to be a two-person battle between Sidney Brown and Drew Makuba. But Sidney Brown's had kind of a quiet camp, hasn't done anything good or bad. I think that he's playing a lot more restrained, which is what you want to see, and I'll be keeping an eye on seeing how much more poised he is, I guess, back there and playing within the confines of that defense. And also, I'm not sure if we'll see Drew Makuba in game one because he's still working his way back from the shoulder, but he's making encouraging signs in that return. But that's a player that I fully expect to start. And then the reserve positions being between Andre Sam and Tristan McCullum, which are two guys that everybody really should be keeping an eye on in this game because they both had some bright moments in training camp.
And also, Tristan McCullum was a guy that Fangio had mentioned in previous press conferences as a guy to look at as part of that safety group. He was a guy who came into games last year for the safety position. So in your mind, is McCollum maybe like a dark horse to be a guy that maybe slides in there because of his experience last year?
Not as a starter, but as somebody who I think could really be a depth piece here, and he is really good on special teams. I feel like a lot of folks have sort of written off Tristan McCullum, or they maybe have a perception because of the lasting memory of him, trailing on that touchdown in the Super Bowl. But he can absolutely play, and I've seen and I've talked to Tristan many times over the past couple of years, gotten to know him. Smart player, really takes to the position, takes to the coaching, and hones in on the fine details of that position. And he's a player that Vic Fangio trusts because he is assignment sound. Maybe doesn't make the flashier, explosive plays that someone like a Sidney Brown or a Drew Makuba can make, but there's something to be said for a player who is fundamentally sound and you know where he's going to be, and he knows where he needs to be on a given play. So I would just caution folks who want to write him off because he's a player that the Eagles like.
Follow him on Twitter X for all of your Eagles coverage at Andrew the Checo, all of his coverage at InsideTheBirds.com. And make sure you like, subscribe, and download to the Inside the Birds podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Andrew is up there tonight at Lincoln Financial Field for the game. Andrew, great stuff today. Appreciate you jumping on. We'll talk soon.
You bet. Have a good one.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, the Eagles, Bengals tonight, 6:30 is the start of the coverage. And then Merrill Reese and Mike Quick call all the action after 7. Around 7:30 will be the kickoff. It's currently the projection here on 97.3 ESPN, your home for the Eagles in South Jersey. I just want to hit on really quick a couple of the points we talked on with Andrew. Let's go back to Will Shipley. When you sign a guy like A.J. Dillon, he's not coming in here to play the role of replacing Kenny Gainwell. A.J. Dillon is here to be a variation of Saquon Barkley. He's not coming in here to be Kenny Gainwell. So you need to see if Will Shipley can step up into that change of pace, third down back. Saquon has already been catching passes more in training camp this year. So we're not expecting it to be they're running the ball, Saquon is in the game. They're throwing the ball, Saquon comes out of the game. We're not expecting that at all. So I am very curious to find out, are we talking about an Eagles team? When you think about the running back position, could Will Shipley earn the opportunity to be the primary number 2 back? We're going to find out in camp how his pass blocking is, how instinctive he is as a back out of the backfield. Second position, tight end. I am very fascinated by what Andrew said because Kylan Granson is definitely not the guy that I was under any impression was going to be in a position to be that number 3 guy. I really thought that there were some other guys like E.J. Jenkins and Harrison Bryant that were, for lack of a better term, going to get those opportunities. But you heard Andrew say that Granson, the SMU is where he went to school, but he's a guy who can do multiple positions. He can line up in the backfield. He can line up at tight end. He can split out. He can do a lot of different things. And we know the Eagles love versatility, right? They love having guys who can do multiple positions, multiple responsibilities. So is he in a position, because of that versatility, that now he's going to knock Harrison Bryant, who is a solid veteran tight end, but he's not as versatile as Granson is, and E.J. Jenkins, who is not as competent or as reliable, shall I say, as a receiver as Granson is? Does Granson have an opportunity now to put both of those guys behind, basically behind the 8 ball? It's something you have to consider, because you heard Andrew say he expects them to only carry 2 tight ends on the active roster. So if your tight ends are Goddard and Calcaterra, and then you're going to try to put 2 tight ends on the practice squad, well, that means you have 3 guys competing for 2 spots. And you heard him say, hey, E.J. Jenkins, he's dealing with an injury. Well, if Jenkins doesn't get on the field soon, he may be the one in trouble here. Or does Granson, what happens if Granson performs well in practices, but not as well in a game like tonight? Is that an opportunity for someone like Harrison Bryant to come in and say, look, I might not be the best practice player, but I'm a much better when the lights are on player? Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, reviewing our 4 positions for football and 4 we are focusing on tonight when the Eagles play the Bengals here on 97.3 ESPN. Defensive tackle. The trading of Thomas Booker was a huge deal, because now it's a clear sign that you believe in a handful of guys. We know Ty Robinson is a guy that everyone loves. He's not going anywhere. He is a guy that, you heard Andrew say, he hasn't done anything special in camp, but he's just been good. He's been reliable. Moro Jomo is a guy that everyone says has flashed in training camp. So those 2 guys alone made Thomas Booker expendable in the trade that landed you Jacorian Bennett. So now we get to Gabe Hall. 6'6", D tackle from Baylor. This is a team that already is without a clear candidate to be the backup for Jordan Davis. Notice I don't say the backup for Jalen Carter. No one's replacing that guy. Jalen Carter played almost every snap of every game last year. If Carter maintains that pace, I'm not worried about who the backup coming in for Jalen Carter is. Jordan Davis is not going to play every snap of every game, not because he was not going to be in shape, but in part, you just like to rotate guys a little bit. And right now, it's starting to look like that the rotational guys to come in and play next to Jalen Carter or give Jalen Carter a quick breather, Ty Robinson, Moro Ojomo. But who's the 5th guy? Is Gabe Hall going to be the guy to step up and show that he deserves more opportunities? He is someone who is very, very interesting size-wise, physical ability-wise. Will he take this opportunity and run with it? We're going to find out starting with tonight's game. And then finally, it's safety. I think safety is one of the most interesting positions on this team, because there's only one guy that you know for a fact that will be on the field week 1 of the 2025 NFL season. And that's Reed Blankenship. And listen, you can tell me all about DeJean playing safety all you want, but I think that is more of a scheme situation, a matchup situation. I don't think DeJean is your starting safety anytime soon. I still think they value him very much at nickel in the corner slot position. Also, there's a lot of versatile options you can do with him at that position. So it comes down to a couple guys. Sidney Brown. He's been here for a few years now. Remember, he did not get a lot of practice time with the team last year because he was coming off of that horrible injury with his knee. This is now the first minicamp and training camp Sidney Brown has been on the field for the entirety. Is he going to have an opportunity to lock down that safety spot? Then you have Drew Makuba, a guy that a lot of people in the Eagles organization were very, very excited to draft. He sustained a shoulder injury about a week ago. Is he going to be ready to go for this game? Andre Sam, undrafted free agent, a guy that the Eagles have been kind of keeping around, trying to figure out who he is. Is he going to be a guy that maybe steals a roster spot from somebody? Tristan McCollum, to me, I called him the dark horse because he knows the offense. He was one of the primary guys who came in when guys got injured or when C.J. Gardner-Johnson got kicked out of the game last year against Washington. It was McCollum that came in. And Andrew's right. A lot of people might focus on him getting beat over the top in the Super Bowl, but you're not looking at the fact that basically 99% of all safeties playing that position would have probably been beat over the top by the Chiefs on that go route in the Super Bowl. So I will never hold against a guy who got beat on a well-executed route. Now the question is Tristan McCollum a guy who's going to be able to step up and stand out enough in these preseason games, in the inter-squad practices, and in training camp for him to say, I need to be the starter at safety next to Reed Blankenship? Is it a foregone conclusion? It's the starting job comes down to Sidney Brown and Drew Makuba. If Andrew Sam plays well enough, does he maybe steal a roster spot from somebody and the Eagles might decide to go with multiple safeties into the season? Because again, we know Blankenship is one. But between Sidney Brown, Tristan McCollum, Andrew Makuba, and Andre Sam, that's four guys who are in theory battling for three spots, but there's no reason why you can't keep either four safeties on the active roster, one or two guys in the practice squad, or keep five safeties on the active roster, and then kick a sixth guy to the practice squad. I just don't have a ton of confidence that Louis Cine is going to be able to overtake some of these other guys with the way training camp is going. But we'll see. Maybe he is a guy that, if he makes a big play in the game tonight, he could be a guy that kind of vaults himself into that conversation. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank. See you out, and don't forget Eagles versus Bengals tonight. Pre-game coverage starts at 6:30, and then Merrill Reese with Mike Quick Call the action starting at 7:30 here in your home for the Eagles football all season long, from the preseason through the regular season, and for another deep playoff run. We got you covered right here daily on the Sports Bash and with every game on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up on the other side, it's another edition of Nick's Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw is back as we hang out. I'm sure he has some thoughts on tonight's Eagles preseason game and some Phillies talk and more. All that still to come. Josh Hennig hanging out with you, filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. NFL, the Eagles open up their preseason schedule tonight as they host the Cincinnati Bengals, one of 3 preseason games in the month of August. Starters expected to rest, including quarterback Jalen Hurts. Tanner McKee is expected to start tonight at quarterback. There have been some new additions to the Eagles this year, including running back A.J. Dillon and tight end Harrison Bryant. The Eagles enter this season under new offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo. The Phillies starting a 10-game road trip on Friday, starting with the Texas Rangers in Arlington. They'll also face the Cincinnati Reds and the Washington Nationals. The Phillies coming off a 5-1 loss to Baltimore on Wednesday afternoon, snapping a 3-game losing skid. They're ahead in the NL East by 2.5 games over the Mets. Christopher Sanchez, the scheduled starter for the Phillies on Friday. He's 10-3, a 2.40 ERA. Rangers going with Merrill Kelly. He's 9-6. Progressive Insurance, bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
Go to Ocean Casino Resort for our 7th birthday. With over $7 million in prizes, it's time to go for the win. Make Ocean Casino Resort the cherry on top to your summer. Book today at theoceanac.com. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. We have a very nice stretch of weather coming up. We're talking about sunshine and warm temperatures, low humidity, and no rain right through the upcoming weekend. For tonight, mainly clear and comfortable. Low temperature dips to 64. Tomorrow, sun and clouds, dry, high near 80. Mostly sunny and 83 Saturday. More sunshine and 87 degrees, starting to get hot again on Sunday. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
New Jersey's got a lot of summer wow. We got your under the sun wows. Your this is too much fun wows. Your that wine was sublime wows. And your one more time wows. So come see what your wow's gonna be. New Jersey, it's one summer wow after another after another. Find your wow at visitnj.org. New Jersey, little state, lot of wow.
We have the perfect solution for sitting in traffic. You come with me. The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Josh Hennig along with Kevin Durso live in the 97.3 ESPN studios. Now, I got to admit, Kevin, not that I'm not happy you're here, because I am happy you're here. But I've been waiting for this segment all day.
Yeah.
Because, and not just because he's Nick Earnshaw.
Right.
But because Nick and I are kind of like flipped roles today. You know, yesterday, Nick was the man driving the ship for 4 hours. Did a great job down at Yuri's in Wildwood for the Phillies watch party. And then, you know, I saw Nick afterward, right?
Yeah.
He came back, brought the equipment back. So now the scripts people have that I've been driving the bus, and now after a time, I get to see and talk to the one and only Nick Earnshaw for today's Nick's Nuggets, being brought to you by The Hub, because gear that works as hard as you do deserves a segment with a man like Nick Earnshaw joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Nuggets, how you doing today?
Josh Durso, great to be with you once again. You're doing a good job driving the ship today, okay? I got to admit, you're doing a great job as well. I got to give it to you, Hennig. I'm glad to hang with you on a Thursday. I love hanging with Hennig every once in a while, right? So get to hang with him on the Sports Bath. Durso, great to see you,
he has to say that, Bowie, he has to say that, Kevin, because full disclosure, I'm just going to put you on blast here for a minute.
Wow.
Is that, you know, I told Nick last night, you know, I was like, you know, we still need to hang out this summer. You know, so it's like, you know, between Durso with the baby and the family and Nick with his very, very busy life schedule, you know, I can't nail you guys down. It's like, I always think that I'm busy, you know, like I'm the one working 6-7 days a week and putting all these crazy hours. And then it's like, I might have some downtime. Then you guys are like, I'm busy.
Well, it's funny. I have a friend of mine that tells me I just go on Earnshaw side quests. That's essentially what I do. I just do these side quests that are random. They pop up out of nowhere, and nobody can explain it but me. So I get it. I understand. Our schedules are insane. But yeah, listen, you're doing a great job. Good to hang with you guys. And by the way, we got to wish a very special happy birthday to my brother. It's also his birthday, too. I got to give him a shout out. But also Jalen Hurts.
That's true.
It's his birthday as well. QB1, Nugget number 1, 27 years of age, a Super Bowl MVP. Listen, he is QB1 for a reason. I don't know if you saw, they were singing happy birthday to him, I believe, at the NovaCare complex today. So that was pretty fascinating. And I'll give you a little nugget. Did you know that Jalen Hurts himself, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy they call the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, has the highest completion percentage? He is the most accurate quarterback in Super Bowl history. It's 71.3%. I just wanted to throw that out there for, the quarterback that brought another Super Bowl to the Philadelphia Eagles. We as a fan base, I think now very much appreciate Jalen Hurts, okay? But if you look at it from a totality in the national media, we've seen all the lists, and I promise I wouldn't get mad at lists anymore because they're meaningless.
But here you are.
I'm not getting mad at the list. I'm just saying he is still disrespected throughout the league, and for some reason it feels worse. So I'm just going to give him his props today on his 27th birthday. Jalen Hurts, I think he might go get another one, to say the least. I think it's in him to go get another one, Josh and Kevin.
Well, if you believe everything you said, Nick,
I do,
then you'll love the audio that we played earlier today. I'll play it for you again.
Oh, let's go. Let's hear it.
Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterback Peyton Manning was on the Pro Football Focus podcast with Chris Collingsworth. I got it right that time, Kevin. I messed up the name earlier. And this is what Peyton said, Nick. And I got to tell you, when I heard it for the first time, when Kevin heard it for the first time, when all of us initially heard this for the first time, we were all like, oh, that's a little different, because we've heard people compliment Hurts before, right? But this compliment, it just hits different.
He's played so well in both those Super Bowls, but I like the way he goes about it. He calls me a lot. It asks me lots of questions. They actually run a lot of plays that we used to run, Sirianni to Frank Wright to Tom Moore, sort of that chain. And he calls me with very specific questions about certain plays. So he's a student of the game.
That's not the normal compliment. Jalen Hurts, I'm calling Peyton Manning, I'm texting him, asking him questions. You ran this play 15 years ago. What do you think?
I'll tell you what, he is signed to the Jordan brand, and he's been hanging out with Michael Jordan a lot this summer, which I am a big fan of. You love to hang around greatness, and the fact he's calling Peyton Manning, figuring out plays from 15 years ago. Isn't that all we have asked? And the fan base has asked, and the media has asked a quarterback in Philadelphia to do. That's all you want out of your franchise quarterback. That's the guy you want to hand $100 million, right? That's the guy you want to have the keys and drive the bus, Josh, of your franchise, okay? That is what Jalen Hurts does. And listen, he is not your prototypical Tom Brady, Peyton Manning-like quarterback that's going to throw for 5,000 yards, the Drew Brees of the world. But guess what? He can do it all. He can manage an offense with all of these stars. And we know with a lot of egos and a lot of star power on offense, it could fall apart very easily. He's keeping it together. You have A.J. Brown. You have Devontae Smith, Goddard, Barkley. That's a lot of personality, a lot of star power to spread the ball around to. And they won a Super Bowl and made it work. And some guys, Devontae Smith, he could be a number one on plenty of rosters. His numbers aren't going to be the same as A.J. Brown's. A.J. Brown's are going to be a little bit more. Saquon taking a ton of the workload as a running back, taken away maybe from the passing game, right? He is the guy, the leader that this team needs. And it's all you've asked. That's all you want out of your franchise quarterback. And he can do it with his legs. He can manage the game. He can pass. He can hand it off. I don't care what he does. He does everything you ask in a franchise quarterback and won a Super Bowl and been twice. And probably outplayed Patrick Mahomes in both of them. So, I think the Hurts hate that continues in the national media is a disgrace. And honestly, you should be very lucky. And no Philadelphia fan, even Mr. Negadelphia himself, should never be negative. The reason why he had to buy the whole locker room jerseys of Jalen Hurts, because he got it done.
There you go.
You know what I've been thinking about hearing that again for the second time, because Jalen Hurts and Peyton Manning, to put them next to each other, not the same type of quarterback at all by a long shot.
Not in person either.
Well,
that's what's crazy.
But that's the thing. Like, how much early in his career was Jalen Hurts focused on more for the running aspect of his game than, but he's not a passer. He's not. So he's calling Peyton Manning on what I would have to assume, if you're talking about plays that both ran, it's passing plays. It's the idea of what can I be doing to throw the ball better. So that's how you evolve your game to reach that next level, is to continue to learn from those around you. And you can do a lot worse than Peyton Manning, obviously, and to get compliments like that in return. Josh, we were talking about it a little bit off the air a little bit. This isn't Jason Kelsey, who played with him, coming back and saying, well, this is why you should be giving Jalen Hurts more credit. This isn't a Brandon Graham, who's now retired, saying that, or a Fletcher Cox saying that. It's somebody from the outside, a Hall of Famer at his position, who's also won 2 Super Bowls in his career, who's telling you this is why this guy has the makeup to be not just a superstar, but a legend of the game.
And by the way, before, Nick, you get to your next nugget, I will also say, because if you watch the whole, like I did, the Pro Football Focus pod, like there's a point in the pod, guys, where Peyton says that he's like, they talk about how serious Jalen is about football. And Peyton says, I don't even try to test my material on him. He's like, I won't even joke with him because I know that Jalen's going to give me no feedback. And Collinsworth goes on to say that Hurts is so serious about football, it's intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you want out of your franchise quarterback. He's serious about the game. It could be a little weird to some people, could come standoffish, could be portrayed that way. I understand. That's fine. Everyone's got different personalities. The guy's a winner. I mean, the guy is a total winner. I mean, I gave out the nugget just a couple of minutes ago about his completion percentage. He leads the Super Bowl for quarterbacks in completion percentage. That's a minimum of 50 pass attempts. I love the argument that he can't pass. I mean, are we kidding me? So he's also joined Aikman, Brady, Mahomes as the 4th quarterback to ever throw for over 70%, have a 70% completion percentage in the Super Bowl. I mean, if he's not a top 5 to top 10 quarterback in the league, then I don't know what is at that point, Josh and Kevin.
All right, what do you got for the next nug?
All right, nugget number 2. On the Exciting Mike's podcast with Cooper DeJean, Reed Blankenship, they were talking about the 17 team versus the 24 team. And Jason Kelsey got, because he only played on the 17 team. This is the first year he retired. So Cam Jurgens took his spot. Right. He kind of jokingly said the 17 team would essentially win. I'll leave it at that. It was a little, but he said a little bit more than that. Can't really say on the airwaves here. But which team, it got me thinking, guys, which team do you think would win if they faced off against each other? Now, there's a couple players in there that are on the 17 team. Not a ton, but a couple. Which team would win, the 17 team or the 24 team? Which one are you taking?
I'll let you go first, Kevin.
Oh, boy.
Unless you need more time thinking.
No, I was, you know what, like, because this also kind of factors into the discussion of which one was more satisfying in a way. I feel like 17 was more satisfying as both the first, beating Tom Brady at the top of his game with what was going on, because it felt there was a point when Carson Wentz went down that year that felt like all the air was let out of the balloon, it's over, and then Nick Foles brought it back from the dead kind of and got you there somehow. I think the better team's the 24 team. I think they were more complete. Defensively, they were more complete. The offense, when you look back on it, if you had to go back and play that 17 Super Bowl again, 9 more times, you might lose it 8 more times out of the next 9. That one shot that you had where everything seemed to go the right way, I don't think that would be the case with the 24 team. I think that team, by the time they got there, was in a position where everything was working really well and you had more personnel around that would have gotten the job done. So I think it's the 24 team.
To me, this is the easiest question ever asked on this segment. Nick's Nuggets here on 97.3.
You better
ESPN.
be right. You better say the right answer here.
Because Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill, Kevin Durso along with me in the studio, Nick Earnshaw, parts unknown, behind a microphone with a white wall behind him with a white T-shirt on. 2024, BTA 2017. Okay? Better wide receivers. Better tackles. Remember, that Super Bowl was Halapuli Vati Vaitai.
Yeah.
The left guard was Wisniewski. Mailata and Dickerson are way better than those guys. I'm sorry. The running backs are extremely better.
Yeah.
Saquon is better than LeGarrette Blount, Jay Ajayi, Corey Clement combined. I mean, the only position on the offense in 2017 that's a clear favorite, we could all agree Ertz is a better tight end in his prime than Dallas Goedert, right? But, like, you're telling me they both won Super Bowl MVPs. You just gave the stat, Nick. Hurts has better stats in the Super Bowl than Nick Foles, okay? So Hurts has to get the edge there. And then defensively, I mean, come on. Jalen Carter, stud. The cornerbacks in 2017 were Jalen Mills and Ronald Darby and Rasul Douglas. Slay, Mitchell, DeJean, hello. Like, everything is better about 2024 than 2017. And the fact that Kelsey would even argue for 2017, it just makes me question, is he able to separate himself?
So I will say this. He was it felt like it was in jest a little bit. Like he was joking, essentially, because, he was a part of that team. He didn't get to be a part of the 24 team, right? So he was half kidding when he did say it, but I totally agree. It's not even close. The 24 team just blows the 17 team out of the water. And, Durso, you go back to the point of which is more satisfying. I think the aura of the 17 team is great because it was the first one, right? Right. It was the first one. It was just no one had experienced it in this area before. And that was what was so great because it was the first time, and you can never beat the first time, right? But the 24 team, I mean, the fact they went up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who had a documentary all planned for their 3P, and you blow them out of the water, it just shows how dominant this team is, especially on the defensive side of the ball. This defense is ridiculous. I mean, that team gave up 30-plus points in that game, right? And, they did get the Brandon Graham strip sack. It's great, but this defense was much better than that one for sure. And you bring up the secondary. That's great, too. But what's great about both teams is they both have quarterbacks that should have their number hung in the rafters. That's what's great about both of these two teams. Number 9 at one point will be up there, and I think number 1 will be up there at some point as well. So that's what's great about both teams, to say the least. I had to get that in there for you, Josh.
We're moving on to the next one.
We're switching sports now. We're going to the Philadelphia Phillies. And yesterday, Ranger Suarez struggled yesterday. We had the Phillies watch party. Durso was there, Pete G, Josh Hennig, and Alex back in the studio. We had a lot of fun. It was a great time, but it wasn't a great time for the Phillies against the Baltimore Orioles in that final game of the 3-game set. So Ranger Suarez, he has struggled, and he has struggled since the All-Star break. And I was reading a couple articles today regarding Ranger Suarez and saw a couple of stats. It's kind of similar to last year, right? He got hurt, but before the All-Star break, he was really good, had an ERA under 3. Same thing this year, really good before the All-Star break, an ERA of 2.15. I mean, which is very funny, Philadelphia area code there. But also, since the All-Star break, he has struggled mightily. He has an ERA right around 6. He's 1-2. It feels like that, and Ricky Bo said it on the post-game show last night on NBC Sports Philadelphia, it feels like he's running out of gas. Durso, Hennig, does it feel like we're running into the same issue with Ranger Suarez once again this year? He didn't get hurt. He hasn't been hurt this year, knock on wood, but it feels very similar, and it feels like a Groundhog Day type of scenario here.
See, you're saying he hasn't been hurt, but he started the season late, too.
Right. That's
which
true.
Is a problem to me.
But it wasn't around like late in the season when he kind of started falling off and wasn't the same pitcher. That's the difference.
Right. It still worries me, though, because, ironically enough, the only game I've been to, this is the family thing that Josh was talking about, that I don't get to as many ball games as I used to either. But so the only game I've been to this year was his first start. And yeah, okay, like the immediate after that, when he, his next few starts after that were more of the Ranger we're used to seeing. But there was an element of concern there because it was a mix of he's not the same type of pitcher as Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, even Aaron Nola, where they have a put-away pitch. He doesn't really go, and he strikes out a lot of guys, but he doesn't have the put-away pitch from a speed factor.
No, his velocity hangs around 90.
He pitches a little like Jamie Moyer had to pitch, where when you don't have the velocity, you have to locate.
I will say it's a little bit of an unfair analogy because Moyer couldn't get past 84.
No, I'm not trying to compare him to Moyer directly with like the speed, his own velocity. He's got better velocity than that, but his location is something he has to rely on so much that, like, for me to know Rangers on, he has a strikeout pitch because he's able to take a lot off of what he already has. He has the ability to keep the ball down, so he keeps the ball on the ground more. Like, look at his last couple of starts. What's been the big and granted, in one of them they came back from it, but he surrenders a 3-run home run in both of his last 2 starts. It deflates the whole outing because that one, in particular the first one I'm referring to, that was the only mistake he really made, but it still is enough to take the wind out of your sails. Now you got to play from behind. Now you got to try to get back from it. If that's what he's doing with consistency as we get into the late August starts and September starts, I just don't know about how long he's going to be for the role he might need to have to be in the rotation come the postseason.
Just to play devil's advocate, because Nick, I did ask a similar question earlier in the show about Wheeler, Suarez, about have these guys been overused. Here's another side of the question. You notice what happened yesterday to Ranger keeps happening to another pitcher on this team, Luzardo. Is the issue not them wearing down, or is the issue they can't get through the lineup the third time? Because Ranger was great through 4 innings yesterday, right? Luzardo, numerous games this year, he's been great through 4 innings. But once he gets to that lineup the third time, things are going sideways. And I'm just curious, is there something going on with the pitching game plans here?
Yeah, and I mean, that's why those two are the ones always really talked about, other than Nola, because Nola's been hurt, to go to the pen in the postseason, right? You've brought up Luzardo because you think he might be the weakest pitcher out of the bunch because Ranger had been so good, right? And then the argument now is, well, Ranger's done it before, and he's kind of struggled a little bit, especially that third time around the lineup. Like you mentioned, Josh, is he the guy to go to the bullpen, right? Is he the guy to come out first in the 6th, 7th inning or something along those lines to get a big out, go through the top of the lineup in a big playoff game, right? So that's kind of very interesting to see what's going to happen with one of those guys. I think Ranger would be the more ideal candidate because he was good at the beginning of the game yesterday, like we talked about. He was fine. Then you get to the third time through the lineup, and that's where he started to struggle. So as good as Ranger's been, I still think he is the guy to come out of the pen, even though Nola's been hurt. I think you can get a couple of starts out, hopefully out of Nola. You got to see his velo come up a little bit. It's been down in the minors, but Ranger, I think, is the guy to go to the pen in the postseason. I think he's the perfect guy for it.
All right, Durso, what do you think?
It's tough because we were discussing this yesterday, and I had said the Luzardo out of the stretch thing is very real.
Yep,
that worries me. And if he's not able to pitch like that, I at least feel like I can hand the ball to Suarez out of the bullpen and say, "Come in and just get this done."
Yeah, I understand that. I'll say really quick because we got to wrap this up. Like Luzardo, remember, there have been times he's gotten plenty of outs from the stretch. To me, the problem with Luzardo isn't necessarily the stretch. I think there's something going on with his game planning. I think that Caleb Cotham is leaning way too much on these guys to figure it out and not spending enough time inserting himself into these guys' worlds. I remember back in my day. I remember when I was younger, like Leo Mazzoni of the Braves and Dave Duncan, the pitching coach for the Cardinals, they would trot out of the dugout multiple times a game. And you have Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine, some of the best pitchers in baseball, and they're inserting themselves into their worlds.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's going to be interesting to see what direction they go in for the postseason, Josh and Durso. That's the Nuggets. 3-pack for you today, guys.
Nick, good stuff. Talk soon.
See you.
Nick Earnshaw is currently planning to be with me tomorrow, taking the Kevin Durso seat here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up on the other side, a quarterback who has won the Super Bowl will join us to talk about Jalen Hurts and what it is like for a player in the preseason. He's Kevin Durso. I'm Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill. Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN.
This is South Jersey's official home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles return to open the preseason Thursday night against the Bengals.
Burrow back. He tries to swing it out to Chase, and he's brought down for a loss by DeJean.
Oh, my. What a play by the rookie Cooper DeJean.
Listen to all the action with Merrill Reese and Mike Quick with pregame coverage starting at 6:30 and kickoff at 7:30. This is the play-by-play home of the Philadelphia Eagles. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
Are you ready to score your next big drive? Head into the end zone at Bridgeton Auto Mall. They've got a full roster of all-star brands: Cadillac, Chevy, GMC, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, ready to take the field. And right now, it's discount time, so don't wait. This play won't last forever. Take your winning drive to Bridgeton Auto Mall or call in to play. 856-451-0095. Bridgeton Auto Mall, where our fans drive with family.
When you're hiring, have you ever felt like you're missing out on meeting great candidates? Well, they're not hard to find when you go to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day. People who are actively looking for jobs like yours. So it's easy to find the right person fast. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
At Progressive, we understand the bond you have with your boat. It's why people name theirs.
I was pretty hungry and looking at a menu when I named my boat Change Your Tuna. The backup names were Trick or Trout, I Salmonly Swear, and, oh, it gets worse, New Squid on the Block. It wasn't my best day.
Whatever you call your boat, protect it. And start with a quote from Progressive, America's #1 boat insurer. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. #1 rating based on boat market share data from ratefilings.com.
Directions, texting Janine and shipping, on us. The broken coffee maker? That one's still on you, which means you'll save hundreds for your business and get the fastest mobile service with 5G cellular and Wi-Fi hotspots. On us. But hurry, this deal won't last long. Get a mobile plan and free up the budget to maybe, I don't know, fix that coffee maker? Get mobile on us for 1 year, you guessed it, on us. Comcast Business, powering possibilities.
Ends 9/22/25. Restrictions apply. New mobile customers only with internet standard service or above. Limited to value of 1 unlimited intro line apply via 12 monthly internet bill credits. 1 discount per account. Fastest mobile based on mobile Wi-Fi and cellular data in service areas. Ookla Speed Test Intelligence 2H24.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the GPS directions first, before driving to the mall.
Turn right at the light. In 1,000 miles, you will reach Montreal.
Not Montreal, the mall.
Recalculating. 6,000 miles to Nepal.
No, the mall.
Checking first is smart.
Recalculating.
So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Staples presents That Was Easy.
Big year. I'm starting middle school.
Welcome to the jungle, Missy.
Best part? My parents promised me a new laptop.
Perfect for homework, essays, and drudgery.
So we went to Staples. They had all the latest tech, and laptops were up to 40% off.
Woo! Another back-to-school budget saved by Staples Easy Button.
Mom high-fived the cashier. So embarrassing.
Staples.
That was easy.
In-store, online, and on the app. NC 23, select models only.
Hey, this is Josh Hennig, inviting you to join me this Saturday for Hanging with Hennig, 12 to 3 p.m. on 97.3 ESPN. We will review the Eagles' position battles in the state of the roster after the first preseason game on Thursday night. Plus, the Phillies begin a road trip with a series in Texas this weekend, and we will question what is the best starting lineup to get the most out of this offense. Guests for this Saturday's show include NJ.com Eagles and NFL writer Chris Franklin, along with fantasy football insider Andy McNamara. Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN is sponsored by yesterday's Creekside Tavern, South Jersey's best sports bar in Marmora, Clemic Performance Method in Egg Harbor Township, and Dr. Squatch Natural Soap. That's Hanging with Hennig this Saturday, 12 to 3 p.m. on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City, and streaming live on YouTube and X in the Dr. Squatch Virtual Studio.
Protect your home and auto by bundling them with Progressive, and you'll have a little less to worry about. But we know you'll find other things to worry about. Like that text you just got from your boss. Hey, call me when you get a sec. Hey, call me when you get a sec. Hey, call me when you get a sec. Oh, hey, call me when you get a sec. Yeah, this is bad. Oh, well, at least you protected your home and auto with Progressive, so you don't have to worry about that. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
Home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got him. It's a sack.
Sixers.
Oh, baby.
And Flyers.
He scored!
97.3 ESPN. WENJ. WENJ HD. Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
He's played so well in both those Super Bowls, but I like the way he goes about it. He calls me a lot. It asks me lots of questions. They actually run a lot of plays that we used to run, Sirianni to Frank Wright to Tom Moore, sort of that chain. And he calls me with very specific questions about certain plays. So he's a student of the game.
That was Peyton Manning on the Pro Football Focus podcast saying Jalen Hurts, not just a guy who performs well in the biggest games, he calls Peyton Manning. So allow me to make the leap from one Super Bowl winning quarterback at Peyton Manning to another. Tony Banks won a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens, played in the NFL for 10 years. He joins us to talk more about the quarterback position as well as a player's perspective on training camp in the preseason. Tony Banks is back on 97.3 ESPN. Tony, welcome in. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. I appreciate you putting my name in the same sentence as Peyton Manning, man. That might be the first time that ever happened.
Well, I mean, you both have Super Bowl championships, so that's accurate, right?
Yeah, that's accurate.
But to the larger point, though, Tony, obviously for Peyton to articulate what he says about Jalen Hurts, you and I talked about Jalen in the past, about his mentality, his preparation and everything. You know, for you, seeing what Jalen has accomplished and hearing Peyton describe him that way, for your eyes, does that give greater context to what you already thought of Jalen? Does that elevate him for you? What does that do for someone like yourself?
Well, I've been a Jalen fan ever since his Alabama days. You know, he playing for Saban back in college, so I had a I really enjoyed watching him play and watching him evolve. And then the whole Tua thing happened, and he got, went back into the lab and improved on some things, and he's still getting better. It's hard to see that Philly offense. And, I mean, the passing concepts won't ever change, really, when it comes to being able to see the field and spread a defense. But when you watch Philadelphia, you don't see a Peyton Manning-type offense. So, that's interesting that they have those conversations. But Jalen Hurts, I don't think he'll ever be an elite passer. He's continuing to improve in those areas. But he's elite in his preparation, and he's elite as a teammate, and those things can take you a long way.
Tony, the part of that I liked was the student of the game part, because I think that's so important. How important is it for a player like that, who's seemingly at the top of his game, winning a Super Bowl MVP, to still be dedicated to his own growth and evolution as a quarterback?
Well, when you continue to play, you can't help but get better. You can't help but see things quicker, because there's only so many defenses and blitzes out there that you're going to see after whatever. What did you have? Maybe 50 starts or so, or somewhere around there. So there's not going to be somebody recreating the wheel. And anytime you can, because of your preparation and how much time you put into the job, when those things start really paying off, you'll see the offense become Jalen's as opposed to, the Eagles offense. It'll be his, and he'll put his stamp on it, which he already has in a lot of ways.
Tony, you just mentioned about all the time and the preparation. That kind of reminded me of the old saying, in order for you to, master something, you have to do it 10,000 times, right? It's, it's the idea that, well, once you master it, then you want to add more to the repertoire. How much more do you think is in Jalen Hurts in his growth and development? Because, Tony, you know this better than we do. As you get older, you can still play the quarterback position. Jalen might not be as fast or as athletic as he is maybe at 32 years old, per se, 6 years from now. But, the ability to read defenses, the ability to execute can get better, right?
Yeah, and eventually they're going to, start maybe taking less of those quarterback called runs. When you got a franchise guy paying him a ton of money, he's always gonna ad lib and get some yards with his feet, because that's the type of player he is. But you'll start to see less called runs, similar to like Baltimore. Last year, I've been critical of Lamar Jackson as far as a passer since he's been in the league. Even some mechanical stuff that I could really help this kid. But this past season, he showed a jump in his ability to anticipate and really rip the ball down the field. If I was an evaluating a pitcher prior to last year, now granted I haven't seen all Lamar's games, but prior to last year it was like he didn't have a fastball. It's like a pitcher with no fastball. Seemed like he was aiming, and this past season he was really ripping the ball down the field, throwing with some conviction, and that's similar things to what we're seeing with Jalen Hurts. So you see Lamar, they don't have many called runs. They still do a little bit of it, but they want to keep that guy upright. So you just, you start phasing that out of your offense, and that's going to eventually happen with the Eagles too, with Jalen.
Talking with Super Bowl champion quarterback with the Baltimore Ravens, 10-year NFL veteran Tony Banks, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Kind of to your larger point about, Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, tell the audience, Tony, for a quarterback, what is it like in training camp, preseason? You come in, you had your whole workout in the offseason, right? And now you're coming in, and now you're getting back into football speed, right? Football activities. What is that process like for a quarterback?
Well, camp's a little different now than it used to be. Training camp's a little different now than it used to be. I remember with Coach Vermeil in his first year, we boycotted as a team. We probably a week or two into camp, and we had a sit down with some of the veteran players, and me being the QB, I was part of that group, and they volunteered me to tell Coach Vermeil that, hey, we're not going out to practice today. You've been working us too hard. Practices are too long. It didn't work, though. Coach Vermeil wasn't playing that. Coach Vermeil wasn't playing that. So, but what it is for a quarterback is different. Athletically, you're not asked to do physically what a receiver or DB does, or even bang, heads like the lineman, but it's a really cerebral process. And, just like a receiver's legs get tired during camp, a quarterback's arm will get tired also. You're seeing a lot of that in these first couple weeks of camp because you can't simulate that many throws in a week. You know, one or 2 days is one thing. During the season, you have basically 2.5 practices for the week that are really, high intensity preparation type stuff. Whereas in camp, you got, you already know who 40 of the guys are going to be on the roster, and those other, 60 guys are trying to get those last like 20 spots. So as a young man in camp in the preseason, I loved playing. When I was a rookie, I think I was either 1 or 2 in the preseason in the league as far as preseason ratings. I was a rookie, so I got to play a bunch. But then as you get older, you just want camp to get over with because it really is for those 60 guys going for those last 15 to 20 spots. It's really what it is. Everybody else is pretty much set in stone as far as the roster goes. But it's so competitive, those 60 guys going for those last few spots, man. And when you become a vet, you want to just, as a quarterback, I just wanted to put my hat on and watch all the other guys, and see if they can make the team.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Tony, because that's kind of where I wanted to ask you about. Because, in today's game, you have a group of coaches who they won't even let the starters play in the preseason. But those coaches aggressively value the intra-squad practices, when the teams practice with each other before a preseason game. So when you look at the way the league is now, about how it's like, these coaches are saying, we don't really even value the preseason game as much as we used to. We value these inter-squad practices. What is your perspective on that?
Well, that's very true because when you do practice against another team, it's way different than the preseason game, right? Because a game's a game. It's 11 on 11. But when you practice against these other teams, you're able to do one-on-ones with these guys, 7 on 7 with these guys. You get to do inside run. You get to do goal line. You get to do red zone. You get to do all this situational stuff. And because it's another team, usually at least when I was playing, by the time it was usually about the third week where we would go practice against another team. So you're really sick of playing against your own defense and the same guys. You're getting in a lot of fights because everybody's, tired of seeing the same faces. They want to compete against somebody else. But now they're doing those inter-squad scrimmages, practices a lot earlier, and I think they're getting a lot more out of them because, the games are really simple, especially the first 2 preseason games. The defense is simple. The offense is just putting in the basic offense. So you're not going to see a lot what you're going to see during the season, and that helps these guys evaluate those 60 guys going for those last spots. You don't want to make it overly complicated. You want to see them read and react and play free, so you don't want to overcomplicate it.
Well, that kind of is the interesting part of it, Tony, because talking about Tony Banks, by the way, Super Bowl champion quarterback, Baltimore Ravens, as well as the Houston Texans and the Rams during his career, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. The fan, they see the preseason game and they'll make an opinion about a guy, right, Tony? But you, the player, and the coaches will see the guy at practice in the inner squad, and you're gathering information. So, explain to the audience about how a lot of those roster decisions, that's not always happening because of the preseason game, right?
No, it's really not. The evaluation is on a daily basis. I mean, it's literally from drill to drill. So, those, like I'm talking about those 60 guys or whatnot, they're literally from drill to drill, they're being evaluated. And football is unlike a lot of sports. I know we have more guaranteed money in the NFL now, but just in general, it's hard to guarantee the whole roster have guaranteed money because it's such a violent game, right? So you'll see those it become really competitive in those environments. And one quick story. I like to talk. So one quick story. So my third year with the Rams was Kurt Warner's first year. Right, he just came from the World League or whatnot, and he had our GM. I forgot his name, but he really liked Kurt. And so Kurt didn't play hardly at all during the preseason. He was battling for a roster spot with this big lefty, Will Furr, who was a big old lefty out of Virginia Tech, and he's a couple years older than me, getting his first chance to possibly be a backup, being my backup. And Kurt Warner was, like the fourth quarterback because we had Mark Rippon that year backing me up too. So Kurt didn't play the whole preseason. I don't think he got hardly any snaps at all. And Will, he was a little bit of of a pistol. He had a big arm. He was a physical kid. He just was a little, imbalanced at times. He'd get angry if he'd have a hard day. He'd have a hard day reeling it back in. But he had some really good preseason games, and it looked like he was going to be that third quarterback. But they didn't. They were evaluating Kurt from the World League and in practice, and they decided to keep Kurt. And, he didn't play that year, but the next year he gets to be, when they trade me and get Trent Green, he's Trent Green's backup, and that whole story, the rest is history. But so that's an instance where the preseason games didn't matter at all.
That just made me think of something. I got to ask you, Tony. You mentioned about how the people saw the other guy ripping it around, but Kurt was the one who they kept around, right? And it just makes me wonder, like, how many times have you, like, as a player, or situations where, like, you look around and you realize that guy's better than people think? Like, have you been in situations where you as a player looked at, like, another quarterback or a defensive player or somebody on your team, and you look around and be like, people don't realize how good this guy is?
Well, I've been around a lot of guys like that, and Coach Ramil in particular, he always liked finding those diamonds in the rough, the undrafted, the Kurt Warners working at whatever, Safeway or wherever he was working at before World League. So there are coaches that take pride in finding those guys because they're hungry and they see something that maybe isn't measurable, right? I remember when was it my second year or third year? It might have been my third year when they signed London Fletcher. I don't think he was drafted. They signed London Fletcher.
Yeah, undrafted free agent, yeah.
Yeah, like a 5'8" little linebacker. And the measurables didn't make sense, but he would wreck practice, because once you get in the season, especially now, he was on the practice squad his rookie year, I believe. I don't think he played, but in practice, he would just he didn't know how to not go 100 miles an hour. So you get a lot of veterans who were like, mad at him because they're like, man, we trying to be ready for the game, and you out here busting everything up. We can't get nothing done. But he had a basketball background too, so he was like a thick little point guard, and he could move really well, and he was smart, and he just ended up having just an incredible career.
Yeah, London Fletcher, I believe it was 16, 17 years he played in the league. By the way, Tony, he's an example of one of my favorite things before I let you go. I got to bring this up. I always joke with people because, for those who don't know, Tony Banks and I have a mutual friend, Dave Klemick. And Dave and I, we work out once a week on Wednesdays together. Dave always tries to kill me, by the way, Tony. I'll let you know that when we work out.
I bet.
And so, like, one of the things Dave and I always joke about is these guys, what they're listed at, like, height-wise. And, like, London Fletcher, he's always been listed like 5'10", 5'11", but you're over here like, oh, no, he was 5'8". Like,
no, man. He definitely had leverage on his side.
Yeah, leverage, right, exactly. Love it. Tony Banks, Super Bowl champion quarterback. He joined us here on 97.3 ESPN. Tony, always appreciate you jumping on and getting your insights, my man.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, man. Appreciate it.
Josh Hennig here in the 97.3 ESPN studio, hanging out with Kevin Durso, filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. And, Kevin, I had to bring that up because he mentioned about London Fletcher's height. And, like, if you look up right now, like, what London Fletcher's, like, metrics are, he ain't 5'8". They ain't listed him at 5'8".
No, they don't. I think it's so funny you told that story because over the weekend, when the Phillies were going through all the alumni weekend stuff, the Wall of Fame thing, they on their YouTube channel they put out a documentary on Jimmy Rollins.
Yes.
And there was a story within it that the scout that primarily went out to see him had to list him at 5'8" on the scouting report.
No, they was taller than 5'8" they listed him at.
No, they said he was probably 5'6" at the time. But
right.
He bumped it to 5'8" because there was no way they were going to actually come out. The bigger scouts were not going to come out and see a guy who was 5'6" and like 140 pounds or something like that. So they bumped all that up just to get a look at him. And sure enough, the rest is history, obviously, with his career. But it goes to show you that kind of thing. I mean, we've done this with hockey players all the time. We see these measurements that come out on the training camp rosters and whatnot, and and kind of have a look and go, there's no, what's funny though is we don't get to do it with height in the NHL because it's usually a skate height that they add to it. So yeah, okay, maybe standing next to the guy, he's not 5'10", but on skates he is. We always get it with weight. We'll always look back and go, there's no way that this guy is actually 175 or 200, or he's built like this, or he's not,
Well, like for example, the reason why I bring up Dave Klemek is, for those who don't know, Dave Klemek and I, he's been on the locker room with Billy Schweim numerous times here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave will jump on my show as well at times, and like Dave and I will always joke about the actual size of these guys.
Yeah.
Because, to use an example, so I was at the PFL MMA fights last Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
And I interviewed a couple of people leading into those fights. I interviewed the boxers the week before for the boxing event at Tropicana in Atlantic City. And, it's one of those things where it's like, when you see somebody in person, you realize how big or not as big as you thought they are, right? So, like, for example, the guy who won the PFL fights, Thad Jean. Okay, I interviewed him before. Now, he fights at 170. That's what welterweight is in mixed martial arts. So Thad is skinnier than me, but he's taller than me.
Right.
So 170 on him looks different than it does on somebody else. And so it's like, another example is Bruce Selden Jr., the heavyweight undefeated boxer from Abscami High School. Bruce and I actually weigh roughly about the same. Bruce might weigh maybe like 5 to 10 pounds at best more than me.
Okay.
But Bruce is taller than me. So it looks a little different sitting on him than it does, on me.
Sure.
Right? So it's like, now I go to the gym, I work out and everything. That's why Klemek tries to kill me every week at the gym, because, which is a story for another day. But it's the idea that I always laugh when these athletes talk about how tall people really are. So, like, guys like Tony Banks, guys like Dave Klemek and others.
Yeah.
And Kevin, I'm going to swing it back over to you. When athletes talk about how big other athletes are, it's funny.
Yeah.
Because their perspective is completely different than ours, right?
Sure. And see, the joke I always make, especially when I'm around like some of the players I've covered for the Flyers over the years, or personalities that become after their playing career as well, because I always sit there and say Danny Briere makes me feel better about my height, because I stand next to Danny Briere, I'm looking him straight in the eyes. He's probably about, when you take the skates off, he's probably about 5'8" himself, and he was always listed as 5'10". That there's an example, and maybe he was 5'10" on skates when all was said and done, but he makes me feel better about myself because I can look straight at him. I felt that way when Cam Atkinson was here. He was a smaller guy. Then you get guys like Ivan Fedotov, or when Anthony Stolarz was. Stolarz was probably the first guy who actually came into the locker room that when he stood up to be interviewed, towered over me like nobody else. And I'm like, okay, this guy is every bit of the 6'6" they say he is. Ivan Fedotov is every bit of the 6'7" they tell you he is.
Right, not 6'7" on skates. 6'7".
No, every bit of,
right. Because that was always the joke for me, and that is like hockey players do the old school, sometimes the old school, when you play like high school sports, where it's like, oh, we're going to measure your height. Keep your cleats on.
Right.
And it's like you mentioned about Danny Briere. It's like, is that listing with or without the skates?
But what's like the funny thing about it, and I'm sure this is the same way if you get, you get an NFL player who's on the smaller side height-wise or anything like that, like you're talking about, what was Dave Klemek?
London Fletcher. Well, we were talking about London Fletcher, was the guy that Tony Banks talking about.
But what was Dave listed as?
Dave, I believe, was listed at 6'1", so I think they probably listed.
He's still on the
they
probably height for an
but
NFL
they probably
player.
Listed Dave like an inch taller.
Okay, fair enough.
In the program,
that was just me being curious about it. Like I'm thinking about like. It's a situation like that. During one of the Super Bowl weeks, the guys had Radio Row had Britton Covey on. Now, Britton Covey is not a tall guy by any stretch.
No.
But that's a guy who, because of the background, because you go through the whole thing. I stand next to Danny Briere, who's that height, and I go, doesn't matter. You could beat the crap out of me at any second if you decided to, because you've been through it. That's what your background is. So any guys like that, like, it's deceiving because, yes, height-wise, it's not going to be as imposing as the 6'6" guy, but at the same time, I know the background of these guys, and I know what they go through on a daily basis to a degree. I certainly don't know the ins and outs of a training regimen or what they do in the weight room or things like that, but you know enough to respect the process that they go through from the day that this thing starts. That's why I think this is such an exciting day for the NFL, because when you get to that first actual game action, for the guys who just got drafted, for the guys who are in those position battles, this is a big deal for them. It may not be as big of a deal to the veterans who know their place, but it's a big deal for those guys that they get to put the uniform on, go out there, and then try to earn their spot and take all of that practice and all of that process and apply it to a game setting.
He's Kevin Durso. I'm Josh Hennig, filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. The 5 o'clock hour of the Bash is being brought to you by White Horse RV Center in Williamstown and Galloway. The summer clearance event is still going on at White Horse RV Center. White Horse RV, your adventure starts here at White Horse RV in Williamstown and Galloway. Coming up on the other side, Kevin, we got text to get to. Steve from Ventnor, not too happy with us at 609-403-0973. Jeff from Ocean City is happy with us at 609-403-0973. And we still get to the second half of Shaner and EHT's question from earlier.
Yeah, this other player that you wanted to bring up that you don't think is a good fantasy pick this year.
That's correct. You remember. Good job by you listening over there. You might have done this once or twice before.
Yeah. I may have. Once or twice this week, let alone.
That's true as well. He's Kevin Durso. I'm Josh Hennig. We're filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN.
It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. But not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide Free and Gentle provides an excellent Tide clean, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues like dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on your skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
O'Reilly. Check engine, ABS, or maintenance light on? Take the guesswork out of your warning lights with O'Reilly Veriscan. The service is free and provides a report with solutions verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we could recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Actual price will depend on product and subscription plan. Featured products are compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. See website for details, restrictions, and important safety information.
Want a boost in and out of the bedroom? Hims has you covered. Introducing a new 2-in-1 approach to level up your game. Tadalafil for better bedroom performance and zinc for testosterone support. Put it all together and you've got what you need to turn things all the way up. Getting started is simple. Just go to hims.com/radio to start your free online visit. Through Hims, you can access ED treatments including pills, chews, and more. 100% online. No office visits, no pharmacy lines. Just fill out a simple intake form and a licensed medical provider will determine if treatment's right for you. If prescribed, it ships free and discreetly to your door. Find affordable treatment options at up to 95% less than brand names at hims.com/radio. That's hims.com/radio. HIMS.com/RADIO.
Good morning, Doctor.
Doctor?
Hi, Doctor.
Doctor?
Dr. Jackson's practice is growing.
What do you mean we're still short-staffed?
He needs a good patient doctor.
How do we not have enough doctors to doctor all these patients?
And he doesn't have the patience to sift through hundreds of resumes.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job on Indeed, it's easier for talented candidates to find it, which makes it easier for you to hire them. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Progressive's teen driver discount could lower the cost of insurance for your teenager and save you some
money. And then you can still spend money on them. Because just when you think you have a grasp on spending, new sneakers. And then it's money for a school field trip. And of course, spending money. Oh yeah, and a new phone to replace the one they dropped in the toilet. Oh, don't remind me. So just get Progressive's teen driver discount. And then you can continue to spend money on them. Endlessly. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Discount not available in all states and subject to terms and conditions.
This is the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network.
Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. Phillies starting a 3-game series in Arlington with the Texas Rangers on Friday. Philadelphia leading the NL East by 2.5 games over the Mets. Christopher Sanchez is the scheduled starter. He is 10-3 as an ERA of 2.40. The Rangers will go with Merrill Kelly, who they acquired from the Arizona Diamondbacks. He is 9-6, a 3.22 ERA. The Phillies are coming off a 5-1 loss to Baltimore on Wednesday, but they still took 2 of 3 in the series. The Eagles will open up their preseason schedule tonight as they host the Cincinnati Bengals. Philadelphia's offense under new coordinator Kevin Patullo. Jalen Hurts not expected to play tonight. Tanner McKee is expected to be the starter at quarterback. It's one of 3 preseason games tonight. Baltimore hosting Indianapolis, and the Raiders will be in Seattle to meet the Seahawks. Progressive Insurance, bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
Hot damn! Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea just got harder with Twisted Tea Extreme. The hard iced tea taste you know and love, but with an 8% kick of alcohol. Twisted Tea Extreme is made with real brewed tea, goes down smooth, and brings your daytime drinking to the next level. Just look for the bright yellow cans in the cooler and get ready to dial up the fun. Big flavor, extreme kick. Twisted Tea Extreme. Keep it twisted!
Twisted Tea Brewing Company, Cincinnati, Ohio. Please drink responsibly.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. We have a very nice stretch of weather coming up. We're talking about sunshine and warm temperatures, low humidity, and no rain right through the upcoming weekend. For tonight, mainly clear and comfortable. Low temperature dips to 64. Tomorrow, sun and clouds, dry, high near 80. Mostly sunny and 83 Saturday. More sunshine and 87 degrees, starting to get hot again on Sunday. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
Recovering from an addiction is an individual accomplishment. A young mother who chose recovery to care for her family. A high school athlete overcoming opioid addiction. A couple celebrating his recovery. Everyone's recovery is different, and there's no shame in asking for help. Call 844-REACH-NJ. Trained counselors are available 24/7 to help you find the recovery option that's best for you. Tell us your story, and let's begin your recovery today.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill along with Kevin Durso here in the 97.3 ESPN studios. Got a lot of news for you, Kevin.
Yeah.
I have multiple reports that we will see Jahad Campbell tonight for the Eagles preseason game. Now, there are multiple defensive starters who will not play tonight. But apparently, most of the primary players like Jahad Campbell will get time tonight.
Okay.
Now, I haven't seen anything about Andrew Makuba yet.
Okay.
Now, remember, he's dealing with a shoulder injury. But at least it looks like Campbell will get some reps tonight. So you have that to look forward to.
Okay.
By the way, you can see the full list of players you should be watching tonight at 973ESPN.com. We mentioned some of them throughout the show with John McMullen earlier today, Andrew DeCecco. Thanks to Tony Banks for joining us today as well as Nick's Nuggets, Matt Gelb. Been a busy 4 hours here on the Sports
Sure
Bash
has.
on 97.3 ESPN. But as promised, we have texts.
Okay.
At 609-403.
Yeah, we've been waiting for this.
0973. Now, I am purposely starting with Steven Ventnor.
Okay.
Now, you might not know the whole story about Steven Ventnor, Kevin, or maybe you barely remember. But
okay.
So
try to refresh
Ventnor,
my memory because I do listen fairly regularly when I'm
Right.
not here.
True. You pop on the app, you pop on the streams, the video, YouTube, whatever. You pop it on.
Yeah.
So Steven Ventnor's the guy who will text like a gazillion texts a day.
Mm-hmm.
and he'll give us like trade scenarios and lineups and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So Steve is not happy with us.
Okay.
Because he starts out the text by saying, you guys change your opinion week to week. I've been saying all year that Ranger is a situational bullpen guy. Ranger is the best pitcher in baseball for 100 innings. And then he crashes. He's the one with the ice in his veins in the big moments. He's helped his team tremendously. But come September, he needs to go to the pen. And Nola should take his spot in the rotation. Steve goes on to list what he thinks the bullpen should be, what the starting lineup should be, what the starting rotation should be, so on and so forth. But that part's not important. Let's address this. Number one, Steve, it's not that we change our opinion week to week. Now, I can say it's Steve because I've actually known Steve for about 15 years.
Okay.
So Steve and I go back. So I can rip Steve a little, okay? Steve, it's not that we change our opinion week to week. It's the idea that my opinion, I can't speak for anybody else, but my opinion has always been, if Ranger is pitching the way he was early in the year, at the end of the year, you can't put him in the bullpen. That has always been my position.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to Steve's point, and Steve, you want a pat on the back or a attaboy, whatever, it's okay. But the idea isn't that I'm ever against putting him in the bullpen.
Okay.
It was the idea that if you end the year and Ranger is pitching at an extremely high level, I'm not putting him in the bullpen. I'm leaving him as a starter, even if that means him only pitching 4 innings.
Right. You're basing it off of how he does down the stretch versus
correct.
Just making that decision. Like it almost sounds like that's making a decision of, I don't care that you're a starting pitcher on April 1st or whatever it is. When October rolls around, this is where you're going. That's that. I'm not going to adjust that opinion.
I believe you always have to adjust.
Okay.
I believe that you have to. Now, again, I'm projecting a little bit here, but I believe that if the pitching coach is doing his job, okay, and again, I'm looking at who pitching coaches are, okay? Pitching coaches are usually the manager, the supervisor, the offensive coordinator of the pitching staff, right? So it's the idea that, like, in football, you have a guy like Jeff Stoutland. He's in charge of the offensive line. You know, in hockey, you have the goaltender coach, right?
Yeah.
Like, these are, like, separate from everybody else. So, like, the pitching coach, I kind of view in a similar vein, where it's like, you know your guys better than anybody else does. And if I'm the manager, if I'm the fan watching the game, if I'm the analyst, and the pitching coach says, Ranger is still one of our best 3 starting pitchers.
Right.
But you also tell me he can't go more than 4 or 5 innings. Well, I still think that the 4 innings of elite Ranger is still potentially better than Jose Luzardo, Taijuan Walker, and maybe even Aaron Nola possibly.
Yeah, it's possible. What I don't like about what they've had to do over the last several years, and Ranger's a part of this, is kind of have a guy who gives you that length, and then you want a secondary guy. Like, I couldn't stand when they would have to go to whether it was Bailey Falter, Noah Syndergaard, somebody who you knew was only getting you 3 or 4, and then I need another 2 or 3 just to get to the part of the bullpen. But really quick,
that's a problem with baseball in general.
Sure it is.
I was texting a buddy of mine. He got mad at me the other day because I told him that I said, listen, pitching today is nowhere as good as it used to be. It's just not.
It's not, but here's you know what I would counter that with, though, is that the Phillies have made it such a priority to have a rotation as good as they do that it shouldn't be for them. That you're looking for 4 guys who I think need to be able to give you at minimum 5. I always look at it like this. The ideal is the perfect range is 6. I would love if my starter could go 7. I'll take 5. And then I need to have 4 or 5 guys after that I can hand the ball to. And usually in the past few years, Ranger has been the odd man out of that rotation because there's a 4th guy who's better than he, or sometimes it's not, because sometimes he has to start because there isn't a 4th guy. Now that's what I think Luzardo's here for, is he's at least better to get you that maybe through 5 innings, and then or even if it's 4, then at least Ranger's still part of it.
But see, that's the problem I was saying earlier with Nick Earnshaw during Nuggets, which is Luzardo and Ranger are starting to parallel now.
Sure.
Where they can get you through 2 rounds of the lineup, and they're fine. But once they get to that third time, is it they're running out of gas? Is it the game plan goes sideways? You brought up Luzardo in the stretch versus Ranger in the stretch. There's so many questions I have when it comes to this. And I ask these questions because I know, Kevin, as well as you know, anyone who knows baseball knows, in order to be a really good pitcher, you're also probably weird. And these guys have their own oddities and their, this guy takes longer to warm up than this guy. This guy is better in this matchup. This guy is better from the stretch. Maybe you put Luzardo on the first base of the third base side of the rubber. The curveball comes out of his hand from a different angle. Like there's so much that goes into this.
Well, and I think another element of it now is all these injury possibilities that we're talking about with Zach Wheeler and the idea that maybe everything's not quite okay right now. We're waiting for Aaron Nola to come back. If you don't feel confident, I don't want to have questions about Zach Wheeler going into the postseason and worrying about, like I just told you about, I'm okay with 5 innings. I would prefer 6, but I'm okay with 5. That doesn't apply to Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler it's 6. And I'd love to get a 7th out of you because that's what I expect from you.
But really quick, so I think we all can agree that the 2 pitchers we know that can get through the lineup multiple times is Wheeler and Sanchez, right?
Right, and I'd like to believe that if Nola is at his best, he can be. He's shown it in the past. I don't know if my confidence level in that is super high right now. That's the problem. I would love to have a third guy that I feel comfortable enough to say 6 is still the expectation. And then if the 4th guy that I have to put in there, like a Luzardo, is just get me 5, then I'm okay with it. But that was why when we were discussing this yesterday about the bullpen thing, for me, it's got to be 4 or 5 options. And it's why I think Duran is so important to have a guy who is in that role that you don't have to worry about. Okay, that's my 9th inning guy. Now I got 2 other guys who I feel comfortable with for 7 and 8. And if really necessary, can I, and Matt Gelb said this to us earlier about how maybe David Robertson is more of a 6th inning guy. I'm okay with that.
Which is fine because if your 7th and 8th inning guys are some combination of Strom and Kerkering, right?
Right. Well, and that's where I kind of wonder about this X factor with the starting pitcher who comes out of the rotation, because maybe Robertson hasn't given me enough yet to feel comfortable saying, well, if I really need another guy in the 7th. Because you never know. With this 3-batter minimum thing, you get through 3 batters and maybe 2 get on. Now you're not so sure about the guy you brought in for the 7th. I want another guy. That's why I keep coming back to the 4 or 5 thing, because I want to have the ability to, if getting in trouble, a second guy comes into the 7th or the 8th, and then I turn it over to my dominant closer. And that's the Alvarado thing, too.
Right. And that's why, to me, from Steve from Ventnor's point, it's the idea of, if you are bringing Ranger in for the bullpen. Now I'm going to flip it around and try to explain maybe Steve's perspective a little bit.
Yeah.
And that is, he's looking at it as, look, you could bring Ranger into any situation. So from Steve Venner's perspective is, you can still start Aaron Nola or Luzardo, let's say. But if those guys only get you 4 innings, Ranger gets you the next 3. And that's so now Ranger becomes
it's part of the bridge.
Right. So I was just going to say, we said the bridge to Lidge.
Yeah.
Well, now we need the bridge to the back end of the bullpen in general.
Right.
So now if Ranger becomes your, hey, I need you to get me 2-3 innings. Well, you're not asking Ranger to go through the rotation, the lineup multiple times. You're just asking him to get you through once or twice.
And that's why I look at it also as because lineup placement is also a part of this too. Maybe I'm calling on Ranger in the 6th inning, and it's the bottom of the order, and I'm saying just get me those 3 outs, and then I've got my 3 guys for the back end.
Right.
That's where I'm okay with it. But I still need that other guy who may need to get me through the 5th also, and that's maybe it's Ranger gets you the 5th.
Well,
and the 6th.
That's what I'm saying. There might be a scenario where if you're the Phillies, you got to ask the question. Can you promise me Luzardo gets me 4 innings? If he can get you 4 innings, and then you go to Nola, Nola, can you get me 5 without giving up a stupid home run? You know what I mean? If those guys can get you that, then you tell Ranger your role in this series is when, just to use an example, okay? If Luzardo pitches game 2 and Nola pitches game 4, and Rangers' role in those situations is you are coming in when those guys go through 4 innings. And now Ranger is pitching 5 and 6 at minimum. Maybe he pitches 7 if he's on a roll, right? You know, if Ranger gets like stupid hot.
Right.
Maybe that's the idea where Stephen Ventnor or someone else might say, hey, maybe Ranger doesn't want to come out of the bullpen, but you're giving him a defined role that he knows on those days you're pitching.
And the part where I agree with Steve is that Ranger's done it before. That's where I feel confident. The fact that he closed out the NLCS in 2022 makes me comfortable with putting him in relief, as opposed to Luzardo, who I can't speak for his experience with this. He doesn't have any. So I don't want to take him out of a role where I think he's more comfortable, and I would rather put Ranger in a role where he's just as comfortable.
And this is where the Taijuan Walker thing comes in the conversation to me. Because I brought it to Matt Gelb earlier in the show, which was, to me, I think if you could start planning for it now, you go to Luzardo, you go to Ranger, you go to Nola. I know you guys are starting pitchers. I know you guys are used to going X number of innings every start. We're going to start getting you into a rhythm in September that you're not going 6-7 innings a night. You're going to go, you give me 4. You give me your best 4 innings, and you get those guys into the pattern where now they're not stressing about the 5th and the 6th and potentially 7th inning, which is where they usually get in their trouble, right?
And the only concern with something like that, I guess, would be, and McGarry brought it up to us yesterday, the idea you're not locked in, though. So if you're not locked into that playoff spot, you're still pitching them as if it's game 1 of the playoffs and not the other way around, you know?
But you're still trying to win the game this way,
Right, you are still trying to win the game that way.
Because if you're going to Luzardo and being like, look, dude, we get it. Once you get to the 6th inning, you don't have it.
Well, and I think there's a difference between the top 2 guys in Wheeler and Sanchez and then everybody else.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not doing it for Wheeler and Sanchez.
Okay, I thought you were alluding to that.
No, I'm talking about Luzardo, Suarez,
and Nola.
Okay. You're going to them and saying, look, we know you guys can only get through the lineup so many times. So now I got a Taijuan Walker out there. I got a whoever else you want to throw in there. You know, Seth Johnson, I know, has been a starting pitcher in the past.
Sure.
You know, you start getting these guys into the idea that you're not asking them to go 6-7 innings a night.
Sure.
So now when you get to the postseason, it's, hey, Zach Wheeler game 1, Sanchez game 2, Nola's game 3, but give me 4 innings of very good Nola.
And I think what you're referring to also is that what really it is shortening up the leash. Listen, I'll let Aaron Nola go 6-7 innings if he's giving me vintage Aaron Nola on a roll and don't touch him. But if he's running into trouble in the 4th inning, you've got to be ready with that hook also. I think that's valid. And there's also an element with some of these guys as starters that, like we've seen before, that Zach Wheeler, I believe in the last couple of years, has in like a game 5, a game 7, if it got down to that point, has made himself available. Like, you need me to come in for 2-3 innings, you know, on short rest because it's getting to the next series, I'm willing to do that.
That's more of like a World Series thing.
Oh, it definitely is, but
I'm talking about the idea that, and I'll probably
I know, but I think what I'm referring to is that, like, for a guy like Luzardo who's never been there, if Suarez is out pitching him and you would prefer to have him start the game, even if it is for 4 innings, you got to bury the rest of it. Like, you're not above, I'm a starting pitcher. Other guys have come out of the bullpen and done it voluntarily because it's what the team needs at that moment. You've got to step aside and do the same thing.
It's going to be interesting either way. Thanks, Stephen Ventnor, for creating that back and forth.
Yeah,
Josh
Hennig,
along with Kevin Durso, filling in for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. We will get the jet from Ocean City and Shane on EHT coming up next on the text board, 609-403-0973. Don't forget, we are less than an hour from pregame coverage of Eagles Preseason Game 1 versus the Bengals here on your home for Eagles football in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
It's the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Keeping the fans entertained and happy.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Elevate your luxury experience at Matt Blatt Infinity in Egg Harbor Township. Drive home the elegant QX60 Pure with $10,000 off and 0% financing for 60 months. Or take an exclusive Matt Blatt Infinity sale with $15,000 off MSRP with 0 down and 0 payments until September. Got a trade? Matt Blatt Infinity invites you to trade up to luxury. If you own an Infinity or any luxury luxury brand, you qualify for these exclusive offers because at Matt Blatt Infinity, moving up never means holding back. Drive away today, even if you're currently paying on a lease or loan. Matt Blatt Infinity has you covered with a low payment of just $4.99 a month lease and zero security deposit on a new 25 QX60 Pure. Why settle for less when you can afford luxury? Matt Blatt Infinity, where luxury lives and you belong. On approved credit, must have qualifying trade, Infinity or other luxury brand. $1,666 per thousand offers not in combination. $10,000 off and 0% APR offer requires special financing through IFS. Lease $499 a month, 36 months, 5,000 miles per year. First payment $98.68 dealer discount, no rebates plus tax $589 doc fee. Call 877-289-6670 or visit mattblattinfinity.com.
Paul's new drone startup just lost its most genius computer scientist.
We just lost our best genius to some new genius who's got a genius new idea. I'm gonna have to find a new genius, or two half geniuses, and fast.
He needs a computer scientist that can keep his startup from falling down.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job on Indeed, it's easier for talented candidates to find it, which makes it easier for you to hire them. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi, Zoe Saldana. Welcome to T-Mobile. Here's your new iPhone 16 on us.
Thanks. And here's my old phone to trade in.
You don't need a trade-in. When you switch to T-Mobile, we'll give you a new iPhone 16. Plus, we'll help you pay off your old phone up to $800, and you still get to keep it.
There's always a trade-in.
Not right now at T-Mobile.
I feel like I have to give you something in return for karma.
That's okay.
I don't really have much in my purse. Oh, let's see. Juice box. I'm a mom.
I'm good. Seriously.
Let me check. Oh, hot sauce. Take it.
Really, I'm fine.
Oh, I have raisins, a balloon. Wait one sec. I've got cupcakes in the car.
Switch to T-Mobile. Get a new iPhone 16 with Apple Intelligence on us. No trade-in needed. We'll even pay off your phone up to $800.
With 24 monthly bill credits, new line, $100 per month on Experience Beyond. Finance agreement $829.99 and qualifying ported. For well-qualified plus tax and $10 connection charge. Pay out via virtual prepaid card. Allow 15 days. Credits end and balance due if you pay off early or cancel. See T-Mobile.com.
This is the story of the one. As a safety manager at a manufacturing plant, he does everything he can to keep his coworkers safe. From finding ways to reduce risks to keeping safety supplies in stock. And for that, he relies on Grainger. Grainger offers a broad range of quality products and next-day delivery, so he can always play it safe. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Progressive knows when you own a boat or RV, it's like you're automatically on vacation, even if you're actually a marriage counselor in the middle of couples therapy. But in your mind, you're camping in Acadia, puttering around Frenchman Bay. Your boat and RV are both protected. You're lobster drenched in butter and... Uh-oh, did your clients just notice you weren't listening? Quick, do the thing where you just repeat back exactly what they said, but as a question. They bought it. Now back to Maine, earning an automatic discount bundling your boat or RV with your home or auto. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers. Not available in all states or situations.
Comcast Business High Five Hotline. What's the state of your excitement?
I signed my business up for the 5-year price lock guarantee, and I can't stop high-fiving people. High five!
Okay, deep breath.
High five.
You're in a good place. You signed your business up for 5 years of gig speed internet and advanced security, all on our ultra-reliable network.
Gig speeds and advanced security? I'm so stoked.
Yep, and you get it at a great rate that's locked in for 5 years.
Woo!
The high five is just your body's way of saying, I'm winning.
So this is natural.
High-fiving everyone you see in a state of business savings enthusiasm, totally natural.
Sweet! Thank you! Thank you! High five, everybody! High five!
The Comcast Business 5-year price lock guarantee is back, but only for a limited time, so sign your business up today.
High five!
Comcast Business, powering possibilities.
Ends 9/21/25 for new customers with qualifying bundle. Current customers may be eligible depending on services and area. Guaranteed rate applies to monthly service charge, excluding taxes and fees. Other restrictions apply.
When you're hiring, have you ever felt like you're missing out on meeting great candidates? Well, they're not hard to find when you go to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day. People who are actively looking for jobs like yours. So it's easy to find the right person fast. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
You're listening to The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
5 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by White Horse RV Center in Williamstown and Galloway. The summer clearance event is on now at White Horse RV Center. White Horse RV, Your RV adventure starts here at Whitehorse RV in Williamstown and Galloway. All right, Kevin. So with the football going on tonight,
yes,
we got to get back to Shannon and EHT. So earlier in the show, Shannon and EHT asked us about fantasy football, right? Yes. And he was asking about the question about Jalen Hurts, about do I think Jalen Hurts is going to be a good fantasy football player? And I said yes. I think that.
Right.
I think Jalen taking out the tush push and the running and everything. I do think that because you have a passing game coordinator now being the OC, that is going to lend to maybe a little bit more of value for Jalen in that department.
More complete games than just 3 rushing touchdowns for your fantasy, point total.
So I do think he will be a top fantasy performer.
Okay.
But that leads to the other guy in his text.
Okay.
The value of Saquon Barkley.
Okay.
So I do agree that I think Saquon is not going to be like a guy that you are going to – I don't think you go out of your way to draft Saquon or Jalen this year.
Okay.
Because historically, the guy who rushes for 2,000 yards, the most anyone who's rushed the next year is 1,600.
Okay.
So historically, it's just hard to do. It's 17-game schedule. Saquon, I'm not saying he's going to get injured or anything, but I just don't see a scenario where he's going to have the same level of production, which is now going to demand a little more of your quarterback just by offset of the pendulum swing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm with you because it was such a historic season for Saquon that it's impossible to replicate unless you just somehow or other are superhuman. And there's always the possibility that he could be superhuman.
Well, here's the thing. He could go out there and rush for 1,600 yards, have 20 rushing touchdowns.
And still be a great fantasy
pickup. It'll be a great season.
Yeah.
But is that the number one pick in your draft?
Yeah, it's always tough because and the running backs tend to go early in these things because there's a lot of point value there. Like I can think about all the people who jump and pick McCaffrey right away, and it's not the pick, sometimes because for the same potential reason for a guy who's in and out.
I think there's another running back this year in the fantasy football, and we'll get into this more with Andy McNamara. He's going to be joining me for our fantasy football weekly segments on Hanging with Hennig on Saturdays on 97.3 ESPN. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, might be the sneaky guy to have a monster year. Because remember, Detroit, no Frank Ragnow. He's their center. He is retired at the end of this year. I think that Gibbs is going to get leaned on. No Ben Johnson and Jared Goff's here. He's going to regress a little bit. The offensive line's going to regress a little bit. So what do you do when the other pieces regress? You lean on a running back.
Yeah.
I think Gibbs is going to have a monster year, and he might actually have more fantasy points this year than Saquon Barkley.
Interesting.
Jeff from Ocean State chimed in and says, what about my boy Kyle McCord? Is he going to get any snaps tonight? He will get snaps because he'll probably play the entire second half.
It's probably true. I am looking forward to seeing him, though.
By the way, Jeff from Ocean State says, I enjoyed Kevin and Josh's analysis of 2017 versus 2024.
It's awesome. Thanks, Jeff.
So thanks to everybody for texting in throughout the show. Thanks to Matt Gelb, John McMullen, Andrew DeCecco, Nick Earnshaw, and Tony Banks for joining us. Thanks to Kevin Durso for joining me in studio. I'm Josh Hennig. I'll be back tomorrow filling for Mike Gill. Have a great night. Hey, this is Josh Hennig, inviting you to join me this Saturday for Hanging with Hennig, 12 to 3 p.m. on 97.3 ESPN. We will review the Eagles' position battles in the state of the roster after the first preseason game on Thursday night. Plus, the Phillies begin a road trip with a series in Texas this weekend, and we will question what is the best starting lineup to get the most out of this offense. Guests for this Saturday's show include NJ.com, Eagles, and NFL writer Chris Franklin, along with fantasy football insider Andy McNamara. Hanging with Hennig on 97.3 ESPN is sponsored by yesterday's Creekside Tavern, South Jersey's best sports bar in Marmora, Clemic Performance Method in Egg Harbor Township, and Dr. Squatch Natural Soap. That's Hanging with Hennig this Saturday, 12 to 3 p.m. on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea City, and streaming live on YouTube and X in the Dr. Squatch Virtual Studio.
Progressive knows there are two things RV owners love: to travel and relax. And they like to take both nice and slow. Just like this commercial. And what's more relaxing than the peace of mind knowing their RV is protected by Progressive. Now here comes the fast part. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
When you're hiring, have you ever felt like you're missing out on meeting truly great candidates for your roles? It seems impossible to find them, but they have to be out there somewhere, right? Well, they're not hard to find when you know where to go, and that place is ZipRecruiter. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.